we're going to start right now with the conference and get going because we have a very busy day today. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Helen Wiggins.
Yeah, thanks, Janet. Hi, everybody. Welcome all to the Community and Citizen Science in the Far North 2024 conference. As Janet said, I'm Helen Wiggins. I'm Arcus's executive director, and I'm Zooming from my home office in Kinnick, Alaska, where I was saying before, I think there are signs that our long winter may be ending soon-ish, maybe in a few weeks. And if you don't know anything about Arcus yet, we are the Arctic Research Consortium of the United States. We are a not-for-profit organization, and our core purpose is to advance Arctic research and education by bringing people together to share, make connections, and just really explore ways we can work together towards common goals, like we'll be doing over the next 2 days. And we have a great agenda lined up, and Janet will go into more detail about that in just a bit. But I want to set the tone and emphasize for this meeting and all Arcus meetings, this is a come as you are event. So don't worry about pets, kids, other Zoom realities. We want everyone to feel welcome and relaxed and encouraged to share and learn. And finally, I want to give my thanks to the National Science Foundation, Science Section, who is funding this event. So again, thank you very much for being here. A very warm welcome, and then I'll pass it on for our land acknowledgement.
Thank you. I've been asked to share a land acknowledgement today. So my name is Sophie Crump. I work for the Arctic Eider Society, which is an Inuit-led nonprofit based in Senekilluaq in Nunavut. But I'll start by recognizing where I am located and where I live. So I live in Ottawa, Canada, where I'm a settler on land that was never sold or ceded by the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, where three rivers meet: the Kichizibi, what we call the Ottawa River, the Pasupkejinawong Zibi, or the Rideau River, and the Tenagadeno Zibi, the Gatineau River. And we're here together at this conference focused on community and citizen science in the far north. And I think in light of that, it's important for us to remember that research conducted in the north is always conducted on Indigenous homelands. Over 500,000 Indigenous peoples live in the Arctic, spanning 3 continents and over 30 million square kilometers. So when we're talking about research conducted in the far north, we're talking about research conducted on Indigenous homelands, including on Aleut or Unangan, Dene or Athabaskan, Gwich'in, Sami, Inuit, and Yupik homelands, among others. Some of us here belong to these peoples. Some of us live on these lands. Others of us may live in the south and on the lands of other Indigenous peoples. So I encourage you to take a moment to recognize where it is you live and whose land you're on. If you don't know or you haven't sort of looked into it before, nativeland.ca is an excellent resource to learn something about this. The link is on the screen. But once you've figured that out, I encourage you to take another step beyond this. Once you know whose land you're on, what is the status of that land? Who currently has the power to make decisions about what happens to and on that land? And what role does research and does Western science play in that sort of power dynamic? If you can, I'd also encourage you to learn something about the names for the places around you, the bodies of water, the landmarks, the features of the land in the language of the people on whose land you reside. And I hope in this conference we will continue to work to find better ways to be in relationship to the Indigenous peoples of the land where we live and where we work and with the land itself. I hope we'll find some good space in this meeting to reflect on this, and in particular with relation to how we conduct research and Western science on Indigenous homelands in the North.
Awesome. Thank you, Sophie, for starting that off, and Helen for getting us going. There's some things that we want to cover before we move into our keynote presentation. So going through the agenda, first of all, I want to recognize, well, actually, I'll back up. I'm Janet Warburton with Arcus, and I've been helping pull together this community and citizen science conference with staff from Arcus, as well as these amazing people that we've been working on this last couple of months. The organizers come from all over. the US and internationally as well. So we have David Carnes, we have Nuri Castel, we have Sophie Crump, who you just heard from, Dennis Davis, and Svea Anderson. We have Lisa, myself, Katie Spillman, you'll hear from in a little bit as she'll introduce our keynote, and then we have Audrey Taylor. So none of this could have been done without their help. You can also read more about them and where they come from on the website. Next slide, please. Our conference, this conference came from the need that we wanted to continue what we had started in 2021. I don't know how many of you were in the 2021 conference of the same name, but it was a starting point to start these conversations and learn to see what people were doing in the Arctic as it relates to community and citizen science. So our goal for this particular conference is to continue to provide that forum and learn more about what people are doing that is new, hear from people that have had projects going for a while, kind of get updates, and continue building those collaborations and just providing a space for people to get together. We're also hoping that we can start seeing maybe where there's some gaps. Maybe we haven't, there might be some areas in this area or field of study that we haven't addressed, and maybe we'll start to see those. And like I said, the big thing is to just continue building our community and knowing who's doing what and where people are, and doing building that network. And we'll have more. We'll talk about network building and that community. It's been in the email as well. Connect the Arctic is a place and a space for discussions, but also this conference provides that forum as well. The other thing that was sent out in the email, it's on the website, and we asked you all to read up on it, is our code of conduct and rules of respect. I'm not going to go into them today because there's a really good document that was put together and reviewed by our organizing committee. So please read that. But if you do witness anything or feel that you're not being respected or heard, or something comes up, please contact Lisa or myself through chat or through email, and we'll be sure to address that problem and that issue. And then very quickly, I wanted to go over what to expect today. So there is an agenda on the website. It also was attached to emails that went out for everyone that registered. But today's session, we will start off with a keynote, and we will go into Katie Spillman will introduce the upcoming presentations. There isn't any particular themes. We just kind of grouped similar types of presentations together. There's 15-minute talks, but we're asking the speakers to stop short at like 13 minutes or so that everybody can ask questions. And then we have 5-minute lightning presentations. At the end of every lightning presentation, we'll have a question and answer session. That'll take us through the morning to our first break, which is at 10 o'clock a.m. Alaska Standard Time. All the times are in Alaska Standard Time. I know people are joining from around the world, so hopefully you can use the world clock thing to figure out what time it is in your area. We'll have a 25-minute break and then ask you to stay logged in, and then we want you to come back at 10:25 a.m. Alaska time, and we'll start the second part of our session for today. Similar to the first part, we will have, it looks like, 3 15-minute presentations, a couple lightning presentations, and then we'll go to a Q&A question and answer session, and then we will follow up that with 3 more presentations, the longer ones, and then we will wrap up for the day. That's our day 1, and then day 2 is very similar, although the keynote changes with Donna Hauser and It's pretty similar. The end of the day tomorrow, we'll talk about next steps. So if you have any questions, that's what it looks like. We will end at 1 o'clock both days, 1 o'clock p.m. Alaska Standard Time. A thing that we did at the last meeting, and we really liked it, so we put it back into this meeting, is to have door prizes. We have a staff member randomly selecting participants for the meeting day. And we will have a door prize just before break and 2 door prizes at the end of the day. So 3 people total for today, same thing for tomorrow, 3 people total tomorrow. You do have to be you have to be there for the day, and be, what is the word I want? You have to be present to it. Your names will be, or at least for that day. You will hear more about that, and we'll be contacted by email. We'll announce who the winners are before the break and at the end of the day. And these are the 3 vendors that we've selected. They're $25 US gift certificates to any of these vendors that you want. With that, I think I'm just going to turn this over to our next presenter. And like I said, Katie Spielman will introduce our keynote, Elena Sparrow. So thank you very much. We're glad you're all here.
It is with my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Elena Sparrow. I have known Elena Sparrow since I was a baby, and the 2 keynote speakers, I did not choose the keynote speakers, but one's office is to the left of my office here in Fairbanks, and the other one's office is to my right. So I feel very honored to introduce both Elena and Donna tomorrow. Elena Sparrow is a research professor and education outreach director at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. She's an expert in teaching and learning, education, professional development, and soil microbiology. She's also the founder of GLOBE Alaska. GLOBE is the Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment. It was started in 1994 by Al Gore and a bunch of folks who thought it would be a great idea to have youth monitoring the environment in their own backyards. And Elena was one of the early adopters of this program, and she started GLOBE Alaska in 1996 and has been going strong and building a team of Globies in the state of Alaska. Elena also is the lead of a project called the Arctic and Earth Science Project, which is funded through NASA Science Activation. And it is a project, she'll talk way more about this, I'm sure, a project that really works to braid Indigenous knowledge and Western science, Indigenous science, I should say, also to produce community-centered data sets that can be used for climate action and that elevate youth in the whole process. Elena is also the reason why I became a scientist when I was in kindergarten. She and it's not just me. Elena's like one of the people that's like a kin keeper. She believes that relationships are the #1 most important thing in this work. And I invite her to my class every semester. Oh, Janet, you shouldn't have had me introduce her. I invite her to my class every semester, and Elena adopts family members. She's got the biggest family of anyone I know around the Arctic, and people call her auntie all over campus here and beyond. And so Elena is somebody who gathers family and creates family and inspires people to fight for justice and equity in research, and inspires them to think science is a place where they belong. So without further ado, Elena Sparrow.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Katie. I appreciate you, and I appreciate this opportunity to share my personal journey to community and citizen science in the far north. And I thank Arcus and the organizers for inviting me. And thank you all for dedicating your precious time to this conference and sharing your time with me now. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Elena Bautista Sparrow. I am a wife, mother of two, a sister, and an ate, which means older sister, or tita or auntie to many. And I work at the International Arctic Research Center at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, Troth Yeda campus. It's unceded land, well cared for by the Lower Tanana Dene people for centuries. IARC work is in the Arctic where everyone is native land, and I appreciate Sophie's land acknowledgement. We recognize, appreciate, and honor Indigenous peoples who are the original and successful stewards of the lands and waters. We strive for respectful and reciprocal relationships with all the peoples of the Arctic in our work and to contribute to collective growth, healing, equity, and justice. My journey started in the tropics. And so this was me as a little girl, and that's my mom. I was born and raised in the Philippines by a single mother who was widowed twice, but lost an infant child and raised the rest of us 5 children on her own. I'm the youngest. Our mother instilled in us, besides her deep faith, the value of education. She said, I do not have land or money to give you for your inheritance or education. I can only give you education. With education, you can do anything you want. So she set aside 10 centavos for every peso that she earned towards our education. And all of us children obtained a bachelor's degree in science, 3 of us a master's degree, and I got my doctorate degree. My mother was my first mentor. She was intelligent, sharp, and caring. I learned a lot about mentoring from her, not just the intellectual side, but caring for the whole person, helping others, not just in school or in their careers, but in their lives, if they want to be, if that's part of their priorities. I always wanted to go into a career where I could be of service to others. My first thought was medicine, but we could not afford the cost of medical school. Then I thought about agriculture, which helps feed people. My undergraduate thesis advisor and mentor, Dr. Conchita Valera, guided me toward a major in soil science and soil microbiology in a Bachelor of Science degree at the University of the Philippines College of Agriculture. Right after graduation, I was recruited to work at the International Rice Research Institute. I was inspired by my former mentor, Dr. Valera, to pursue a Master of Science degree at Cornell University, where she obtained her PhD. And I returned to the International Rice Research Institute and worked as an assistant soil microbiologist. And then I decided to go to Colorado State University for a PhD. And there, I obtained 2 degrees, PhD and an MRS. So that's where I met my husband and Steve. And we continued to work together on this 2nd degree. It's been a very interesting and blessed journey of more than a half a century. A wedding gift of round-trip airfare tickets to come to Fairbanks, Alaska for our honeymoon in July 1972 was instrumental in bringing us to the subarctic. It was a beautiful and perfect summer, very comfortable temperatures. Everything was green. The flowers were bright and brilliant and in bloom. We got hooked on Alaska and the Arctic. We decided to live in Alaska and arrived in early 1974. And temperatures dipped down to 60 below zero. One Sunday morning, the car felt like it had flat tires as we drove, and we could not find the church through the ice fog. I wondered whether we made the right choice to move to the Arctic. But in time, we learned to enjoy and love winter too. People, when we told them that we were coming to Alaska to live, they were telling me that I'd freeze to death because I was always cold in Colorado. And so, and also they told us to start a book club because so that we would have something to do. But we found that we didn't have any time for sometimes for book reading because there was so much to do. And so daylight hours started to increase more in spring, and then summer, and everything was beautiful again. And we thought we can do this. We can live in Alaska. Our Arctic stint was interrupted when Steve decided to get his PhD at the University of Minnesota. We returned to Alaska with our firstborn son and Lola. That's the name for grandma. And then we had another child, Emelisa. Steve went into a tenure-track position at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, while I worked for the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Research Service, and started mentoring educators in their classroom and in my research laboratory. I was very much interested in sharing not just scientific results, but the process of how science is done. I now know that community and citizen science does this. In the early and mid 1990s, I learned about the GLOBE program, which stands for Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment. I learned about it when I was on the Alaska State team, tasked with figuring out how to communicate and educate people about climate change, a term that was still considered bad at the time. Our team, made up of 3 educators and me as a scientist, decided our approach would be through working with K-12 students. We figured if they understand climate change, they could take that understanding home to their parents, who might pay attention to it. We got $10,000 in seed money from the National Science Foundation to look at many program options. And GLOBE stood out. It impressed us because it is an international science and education program and currently active in 124 countries. It focuses on increasing the ability of students to collect data, make decisions, conduct investigations, and contribute what they learn to ongoing investigations. Isn't this what citizen and community science is about? GLOBE is a good way, a quintessential way of actively learning about science by doing science, learning about the environment, increasing awareness and stewardship of the land and waters in the schools and communities. It's not just for an elite few students, but a whole classroom of students or anybody in and outside of school. This was highly motivating for me. And I still am very excited about it and get energized when students get really excited about science and learning about their environment and many other things that some of them, you know, I may not notice, and they do. After our GLOBE training for trainers in Arizona in 1996, I established the GLOBE Alaska Partnership through the University of Alaska Fairbanks with a promise to support teachers that we GLOBE trained. I was faced with the challenge of implementing a program with no money. I got small grants here and there to buy supplies and GLOBE equipment and bring in somebody who could help me run GLOBE workshops. I thought we hit big time when I got a $24,000 grant from the Environmental Protection Agency. my first attempt to write and get a successful proposal, which connected us in Fairbanks through video conferencing to Anchorage, Juneau, and Barrow, and working with master educators and climate change scientists. The first defining event in my citizen science and community science work was a 350,000 grant to the university to develop plant phenology measurement process protocols to study the beginning and the end of the plant growing season. The change in the timing of these biological events are indicators of climate change. This marked a turning point for both my research and the integration of these methods in the GLOBE program that began to be used among the citizen science tools and in more than 20 countries. I teamed up with a remote sensing scientist, Dr. Dave Verbilla, and an educator, Dr. Leslie Gordon, in this work. Another pivotal grant was almost $1 million, also funded by the National Science Foundation. It was for our project, Global Change Education using Western science and indigenous observations. But that was after a couple of proposal rejections because the terms indigenous science and indigenous ways of knowing were deemed not acceptable by the reviewers. But after we got the grant, we used the terms indigenous science and indigenous ways of knowing freely and continue to use it. We realized the importance of using indigenous science and mainstream science with the GLOBE protocol measurements to make learning relevant to indigenous youth in the far north. I found that Alaska Native community members embrace the GLOBE perspective. The elders that I've worked with thought that GLOBE was a good way of turning the attention of the young people in villages back to the environment, that they want their youth to learn what the elders know, how they do science and observe, but also want them to learn the Western way to live in a blended world where we all need to get along. So we had Alaskan elders come to our summer institutes for educators, along with scientists sharing their knowledge and expertise. In our early work, we have been blessed, honored, and privileged to have worked with outstanding and famous Alaskan knowledge holders and experts like Caleb Pungawi and Jonas Ramos, who have both passed on. We're eternally grateful to them for sharing their expertise and the experiences, life experiences with us. We will always cherish them, their memories. I'm very grateful to Sydney Stevens, who was co-lead on this project. And we called it for short, Observing Locally, Connecting Globally, who introduced me to Alaskan elders and got me thinking more about how we could blend and braid knowledge systems. We continue to be connected to and grounded by indigenous Alaskan elders like Sam Dementif, Kenneth Frank, Mary Dayton, Doreen Simmons, and many others who have shared their gifts of knowledge, stories, and time with us, and the educators and students we work with. Crucial to our work now in this Arctic and STEM integrating GLOBE and NASA is our partnership with the Association of Interior Native Educators, whose director is Melinda Chase and is a co-investigator on this project, this NASA Science Activation Project. The Arctic and Earth STEM integration of Globe and NASA assets in engaging youth to explore the impacts and feedbacks of a warming Arctic and to apply their learning to action and stewardship projects. Dr. Katie Spellman is also a key co-investigator and co-lead on our team. The braiding or weaving of Indigenous and Western scientific approaches now informs my entire approach to research, teaching, and community engagement in science. At the 2018 Globe Learning Expedition event in Ireland, I brought a group of students and teachers and their elder from the Hetasik Apaluk Memorial School in the Yupik community of Whitlock to share their story of using globe technology and techniques in their study of the Arctic environment. Their study focused on erosion of the river banks in their community. To them, loss of land is loss of heritage. Besides presenting their project in an oral session with a PowerPoint presentation, these students also presented in the Yupik way as a story about their project with a song they wrote and danced to. This fulfilled the students' wish to share not only their Globe project, but also to share who they are as Yupik people. What they did resonated with and was much appreciated by the other Globe youth and adults from all over the world at that conference. Our project, our NASA Science Activation Project, developed this learning framework that uses Indigenous knowledge, Globe, and NASA assets to make STEM learning actionable and relevant. So the learning starts from Indigenous elders and long-term residents and scientists about the science and impacts of climate change. And we continue to tweak this. It's a continuously changing, evolving framework to make it better to help students. And one of the things that we have done is our workshops to include not only educators, but also community members, so that there are more, so people come in teams and they are supporting the learning of youth using citizen and community science. Our Arctic and Earth Science team has found that we can influence the development of additional resources to meet local needs. A lot of the Globe protocols are usable here in the Arctic, but we also have some specific issues. So we developed the Frost Tube protocol led by Dr. Kenji Yoshikawa for observing the timing and depth of soil freezing in places where soils seasonally freeze and or underlain by permafrost. It's an important indicator of what's happening to the permafrost, when temperatures rise. This Frost Tube protocol is now included as a Globe protocol in a Globe Teacher's Guide, and Frost Tube data has been entered into the Globe Data Archive. One of the related NSF projects called Fresh Eyes on Ice that I am a part of developed a method for communities and youth to observe freeze up and breakup of rivers, ponds, and lakes using the Globe Observer app to take and upload pictures, measure snow depth and ice thickness to provide much needed data to help predict the timing and intensity of river ice breakup and the potential for flooding, and also to provide information for safe travels and activities on ice-covered areas and regions. Katie Spellman is co-lead on this Fresh Eyes on Ice project and also the PI of an NSF, of a NASA grant, continuing the work from this NSF funded part that has ended. It has been a blessing and a privilege to work with Katie Spellman, who is a leader in community and citizen science. I think the development of environment-specific globe protocols is another step in seeking consensus on climate change and ways to combat it, which has become politically sensitive. We can use community and citizen science as common ground for education, for STEM and climate learning, and as a tool for climate adaptation. Working with elders and youth and intergenerational learning has been very inspiring for me and culturally enriching. I have learned from elders, educators, and community members and youth. Using multiple knowledge systems in community and citizen science is very important in providing an inclusive and equitable learning environment, as well as for developing and sustaining respectful, reciprocal, and trusting relationships. Again, thank you for listening. I appreciate all of you.
I love you, Elena. And you don't see in a regular science conference, you don't hear the words "I love you" very often, but that's what separates this type of work from normal science, is like it's relationships. So thanks for being a role model, Elena. We are gonna move into our main session, and these will be 13-minute blocked talks. They'll have 2 minutes for questions at the end. And we'll also do some lightning talks in this block, and those are 5-minute back-to-back, boom, 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 boom. And then after that, the boom, 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 we'll have a block of questions for the lightning talks. For logistics of how to ask questions, you can raise your hand and unmute your microphone, and then we'll make sure you get called on between me and Janet.
Yeah, so just very quickly before we get started on that, we did have a few extra minutes, so if anybody does have questions for Elena, we are happy to do that, or you can talk with her in chat if you want to. So there's that, and then we can get started on those presentations. And presenters, just to let you know, there is going to be a timer for you. I don't know if you saw that happening, but there will be a timer on the top bar. So anybody have questions real quick? And Zeb, you can go to gallery view for this as well and stop
Elena,
sharing.
get your camera back on.
Yeah, if you have a question, feel free to just jump in.
Elena, what do you think? I didn't raise my hand. Sorry, Janet. What do you think? So much of your work has focused on youth engagement and community and citizen science. Do you think that there's any trade-offs in that work, or would you not change a thing? Like, what's the balance of adult-centered versus youth-centered projects?
Well, we have actually our project, especially this science activation NASA project, has started our work with K-12, but we certainly have included older youth like undergraduates, and you and Christy Buffington, who is here as part of our team, have been using the framework that we do, starting with listening to elders in your work, and now even for grad students. And we have had teams come who, indigenous teams who have come they're very comfortable with their indigenous knowledge and expertise, but they wanted to come to look for tools in the Western science world that they might be able to use and apply to their own things that are happening in their community. And that was an example was in Congiganak, where these were the adults who were wanting to use community and citizen science. And I think it has been really good involved adults and community members, because then everybody is working together and as a team and as a community instead of as individuals, which is really part of the way a lot of indigenous people work as a community.
Great. Okay. All right. So I think we're ready for our first presentation of the day, which, if you're ready, Caroline, we'll have you introduce yourself and start screen sharing.
Thanks for everybody to be here. Thanks for the very nice and inspirational talk we just heard. That was really nice. So today I'm talking from Nuuk in Kaalleq Nunaat, Greenland, and that's where I've been living for the last 7 years, originally from Quebec. And so today the title of my talk is Co-Learning about Ekalugaq, Uwaq, Ugaq, in Kaalleq Nunaat and Inuit Nunangat. So this is a nice photo of a place I've had the chance to work in Greenland. That's called Uummannaq. You see all the little boat in the front. Those are Greenland halibut fisher getting ready for their day. And so what is actually Ekalugaq, Uwaq, Ugaq? This is a fish. This is one of the most, if not the most important fish in the Arctic. Scientific name is Boreogadus saida. And otherwise, it also has many names. We call it polar cod in Europe, Arctic cod in America. And we have the name in Katlaalisut, Tunumisut, Inuktitut, that's Ekalugaq, Uwaq, Ugaq. So that's a bit confusing, but that's the same fish. The small fish, actually, not like the Atlantic cod, can get very big and grow, can get very old. So that's a maximum 5 years old and max maybe 25 centimeter long. But it's everywhere, and there's a gigantic, huge biomass of them. So they're very important. I usually say everything you love about the Arctic comes down to polar cod. Well, maybe not the Northern Light, but if you're a seal, you're feeding on Arctic cod. If you're a seabird, probably. If you're a narwhal, a beluga. So it's very, very important. It's the marine food web here you see, and you see that Arctic cod is in the middle. It's really channeling a lot of the energy. So feeding a lot of the animals that are actually part of the culture. And here's some picture of ring seal hunting in Ittoqqortoormiit in East Greenland. So I started this project called Ekalugaq. I guess before I knew it was called Uwaq in East Greenland, and they're like, okay, not that inclusive. But anyway, it was about using different kind of knowledge to get information about Arctic cod. And so I had a team, or still have, it's going toward the end of that project, but we were natural scientists, social scientists with the different expertise, people working with fish, birds, mammals, people working with models, anthropologists, social scientists, and also our partners in the communities, Fisher, Hunter, and Knowledge Holder. So you have all the list of names here. We're a nice team and from different part of the world. So I today present a few snapshots of the project. It's a bit of a well, it's not that mismatch, but it's just, you know, yeah, everything is around polar cod in Greenland and Nunavut. So those are some of the places the project is taking place in pretty much all around Greenland. Well, everywhere there actually polar cod, and in a few places in Nunavut as well. Some of the method we used local knowledge. So we had interviews. Well, it's a lot of community-based research. Here we have a picture of a ring seal being sampled with some kids in Umanak. And we also had, I said, modeling. Also, we used some fishery survey data that we had at the Institute already, and made the best of these data. And we also collect some samples in partnership with the communities. And the first example, where we focused our effort was in Umanap, Kangalua, and Soloswak, which is a system of fjord in West Greenland. You can see on the map. And in this place, that's the first photo I showed in the talk. So they are fishing Greenland halibut in both the summer and winter. And they use polar cod, Egarugag, to bait their longline. They can use also capelin and other bait, but if they have access to polar cod, they go and fish them for their fishing practice. So we went and asked them what they know about polar cod, because obviously they know a lot. And they also helped us getting some samples. So it's a really, really good partnership. And we learned so many things. I'm so grateful and impressed. So for the first time, we really got real indication that polar cod are right in front of glacier front. That's where they go for fishing them. And one fisher actually pointed to a spawning location. That's very something that is not really well known for the species. So that was also very important. We've been told that they are not a trend in the species. It's not declining or increasing in the region, but there are bad year and good years. And those that are bad years for polar cods are also bad years for ring seals hunting. Another thing that we learned was not a question we asked. It was just like that. They said that there was two kind of polar cod, that there was a white one and a dark one. So that was very interesting. And now we have a follow-up project in which we ask a fisher to sort them into color scheme, and we try to see if there could be maybe a genetic reason behind that or something else. And then we also discovered that there were a very skewed sex ratio in the fish we got. So we had some hypotheses about that. Could be size selective predation by the seals, or it could be spawning migrations. And yeah, there's a paper published about this project. Well, this part of the project you can read, and the rest is project that are, well, paper that are in preparation, part of the Egarugag project. This is using the trawl survey, so not really any community partner in this. But anyway, we saw that in West Greenland there's been a northward shift in polar cod, as we always think or see that, okay, species are moving north. So we really see it in this data set that span from 93 to 2023. And if you can, well, from the map, you can see that, yeah, the southern bit did kind of disappear from that area. And in the time series, you can see that they've been quite a decline. There's a lot of interannual variability, but clearly it's no longer in the higher value anymore. So that was for West Greenland. We have a few data for East Greenland in the survey, but we can't say anything about a shift with these data. But we were colleagues of mine, partner in the project, were in Tasiilaq, which is, you can see on the map, in East Greenland, doing interview with Fisher. And they were saying that the polar cod mostly disappear from this area. So that's where we get our indication that the species has moved north also there. So they were also using it as bait. They were even using it. They were even eating it when they were there, and it was also near the glacier. Another switch to northeast now in the Qaanaaq area. We have a very good, very interesting project here in collaboration with Monica, who's studying marine mammals, and this is especially for ring seal. So if you look at the map, the red dots are where we got, we're collaborating with the hunter, and they were tagging where they got their seal when they hunt it. And so everywhere, every time you got a seal that's been harvested right in front of the glacier, that seal had polar cod in its stomach, and all the blue dots are seals were collected in this area. They had no polar cod in this area, so that's a very clear, direct indication that polar cod are aggregating in front of marine terminating glacier. Another team we had in Qaanaaq collaborating with Hunter is studying the thickbill mirrors. And so we had data from 1997 and data from last year, and two different, for the adults and also the chicks. For the adults, you get the whole bird and you look at the stomach content, and for the chicks, you either look at them or take notes or take photos, as is in the case there. So there was not much change. Mostly there's still polar cod in that area is the main prey of thickbill mirror, the adults and the chicks. But we know, because we've been talking with locals there, and we know that there are more fish species in the area, including cavelin. So maybe we can expect a little bit of change in the prey for the seabirds in the long term, or in the coming years. And just last, that's not, yeah, that last slide that I had is that it's not exactly part of the project. It's a connected project that I want to present, and it's a project that wants to kind of track a little bit with community-based monitoring, track the northward shift in fish species. So we want to use the Siku app, which is maybe some of you have heard of it. So you can post if you see some sort of fish you've never seen, either in the water or if in your seal stomach on birds or something like that. So that's the idea behind that project. Yeah. So, well, that's it. I don't know if I'm on time. I think that's all right. But then I have a bit of time for a question, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. You have what, 1 minute 30 to spare. Are there any questions for Caroline from the audience? Looks
Great.
like we got one in the chat on the Siku app. We're excited about Siku too. Can you describe a little bit more on your partnership?
Yeah, well, I had to wait a little bit because I was not ready for Greenland. So now it's in Kalaallisut. I see that because we are partnering with Sophie, so we had a bit of delay in starting the project, but we hope to have it really up and running. We had some, they had some training sessions. So yeah, that's how it works basically. But yeah, it was a bit complicated in the beginning because if you don't have the Greenlandic version and you work in Greenland, yeah, I think it's picking up in Greenland now. But our project has been delayed a bit, so I can tell more in the next conference.
Very cool. Should we move on, or do we have time for one more question?
We probably need to move on. I'm going to
All
be
right.
the tough timekeeper through this whole thing.
Thank you, Lisa. We
Yeah.
need you.
I'm the
All
bad
right.
cop for everyone.
All right. We have a speaker in transit that is in a far away time zone from Alaska, and we'd like to introduce Keith. Keith is coming from the Alaska Department of Natural Resources, DGGS, which is Division of Geological and Geophysical Surveys. Keith, you want to get going?
Yes. Yeah, thanks everybody for being here. Like was mentioned, my name is Keith. I go by Casey. Work for the state of Alaska, Division of Geological and Geophysical Surveys in the Coastal Hazards Program. Nora and Jesse, my other team members, are in the chat. So if you have questions during the presentation, they can answer those, and also they'll be sharing some links and things. We're really excited to be here to talk about some citizen science initiatives that we are rolling out, and some first looks at some products and surveys that we're hoping to get some help with. And we're really seeking local input, local knowledge. You know, we want to connect with communities and learn from them. They know their area way better than we ever will. And so it's super important for the work that we're trying to do that we can connect with them and gain insights from what they know. Let's see if I can go to my next slide. There we go. So a little bit more about the Coastal Hazards Program. Our goal is to connect with communities and provide scientific investigations and products, services for folks in these communities all over our state. We're a really small team. There's only three of us. Yes.
We are sorry to interrupt you. We are not seeing your slides yet.
Yes, I should share my screen.
Perfect.
But you're
Thank
a
you.
dynamic speaker, and you kept us going even without the slides.
Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, so like I was saying, we are trying to connect with communities to provide them what they need. And really that's informed by what they tell us they need and how we can help. So a few things that we are engaged in, event response. Some folks may have seen us post Merbach, trying to get out there and collect data as close to events as possible. But as a small team, we can't get everywhere. So part of our initiatives is going to be trying to fill that gap and rely on the folks that actually live out there. Next step is we do baseline data collection. We try to get to as many communities as we can each summer, and we collect GPS and aerial imagery. We talk to folks out there in the communities to get that local knowledge about their own history, about where geological hazards have occurred, where they are occurring, and then also to connect with them on what kinds of things they need. We take all that back here to the office and do our data processing to try to create the best products we can, and then apply those through analysis and assessments. And it's the collaboration is really what makes this all happen. It's a very large state and we can't cover the whole thing. So we really, really, really do rely on our community partners. So in the past and ongoing, we have a few different community-based monitoring programs and involvement. Just a few examples, you see the two from Wainwright, those are erosion monitoring, Shishmaref doing coastal profiles, St. Michael down in the middle, that's a camera that's also doing erosion monitoring. Up at the top, Kipnuk, that's a water level sensor install that we did recently. And then Konginganak, Tuntatuliak, those were two trips that we went on very recently to really connect with the community and gain information about flooding and their flood history, and then also to collect some additional data. So Tuntatuliak, we were lucky enough to find somebody to take us out on the river so we could collect bathymetry. And like I said, it's everywhere that we go, we really rely on the community. We can't collect that kind of data without their help. So for the places that we can't get to, we have a few initiatives. This will be in the chat as well, or you can follow our QR code. This is the Alaska Flood Observation Group. It's a private Facebook group that we've set up for folks to connect, to collaborate across Alaska and record observations of flooding that we are not able to get to, that we're going to miss just because of the size of the state, and really help us create better products for them through the modeling and the forecasting. And these will feed into our photo database. Again, the goal here is to connect people with their data, to make it available to them and create that visual record, as well as just a record of flooding that is kind of absent from Alaska. And we are currently working to build flood histories, but we want to set ourselves up for the future so that we are documenting flooding as it's happening and gaining that future flood history as we go. Let me know if I'm going too fast for anybody that's trying to write things down. Like I said, it should be ending up in the chat as well, hopefully. So our next initiative, and this is brand new, is a culvert inventory survey. So we went ahead and set up a web-based application using Esri. And this is meant for folks to be able to go out in their community and verify the location of hydrological connections, specifically culverts, but also hopefully we can expand this a bit to bridges and other things that allow water to move from one place to another that we would normally miss in something like a digital elevation model. Hopefully it is user-friendly. That was the goal. And just a few questions in there. There's some optional questions, but we would love it if folks could go through that QR code and take a look at it. And also we would love to get feedback. There's at the end of our presentation, I'll have our contact information, but it's also in every app that we're presenting today, every initiative. We're trying to make it possible for you to get a hold of us, and we would love to get that feedback. Okay, so another very exciting thing that we have coming out. Hopefully today this will be publishing. We've been working really hard on it. It is our SWIM method for modeling flooding. That stands for Stillwater Inundation Model. And it relies on those hydrological connections, knowing where the water can and cannot get to. It's basically a upgrade from the traditional bathtub model that is more accurate. But it also doesn't require folks to edit the digital elevation models or get into any of the more complex hydrodynamic modeling. The goal here is something that's usable not just by me, but by anybody that can get access to ArcGIS. And like I said, it's those connections that we're making with the culvert inventory, feed the connections in these models and make them better. That then feeds into, we're currently working on flood impact assessments with ANTHC, but in doing so, we wanted to establish a repeatable way of quantifying flood impacts based on National Weather Service minor, moderate, major categories, but alleviating the subjectivity of some of their criteria, so that if folks want to do a similar type of risk assessment in their own community, we want to make sure that that's possible and that it's consistent. So that's another one that's coming out very soon. But in the meantime, until that is available, we have the Alaska Flood Inundation Tool, another web-based application. This is a mapping application. And like I said, this is a first look. Everyone here is going to have the first opportunity to do the demo of this. We have 2 communities that we've mapped. This used the SWIM method to create the inundation profiles or extents. Sorry. And the goal here is to connect Alaskans with their data and give them something that they can immediately use. And for folks that, you know, don't have the SWIM method publication and the flood impact category publication yet, they can go here and at least have a way of visualizing what that forecast means for them as far as flooding. The other thing is, this is for folks that maybe don't have access to these more advanced mapping tools. We want to try to fill that gap as well. And I think I'm getting close to the end of time. So keep an eye out for publications. Like I said, the Stillwater Inundation Model publication should be coming out today, fingers crossed. And then that updated methods for impact assessments and the AKFIT, the Alaska Flood Inundation Tool. And then finally, be on the lookout for flood modeling and risk assessment training opportunities. We're still working to get funding and grants for that, but we are really hoping to be able to get out and connect with community members, citizen scientists, and provide some training on the SWIM method and risk assessments. So last slide, here's our contact information. Hopefully I didn't move too fast and you were able to get those QR codes if you wanted them. Otherwise, Nora and Jesse, hopefully we're able to add things in the chat. Okay, I'm a little bit over, so short on question time.
Casey, mostly like from a practitioner, a lot of us are practitioners of programs, and you have tons of initiatives. I'm like, wow, how are they all doing this with only 3 people? What's the secret? And are there trade-offs in the number of programs and the amount of people participating?
Absolutely, yeah, huge trade-offs. No, I think the main thing is that we're really passionate about trying to make these things happen, and then just putting in a lot of work. no, I think, like I said at the beginning, it's connecting with the communities and learning what they know, and really we have to rely on the folks that actually live there, because we can't get everywhere that we want to. And so, yeah, that's kind of the driving force behind a lot of these initiatives, is trying to make sure that we can cover everybody, even if there's only 3 of us.
Do you have a lot of overlap in who's like monitoring floods and who's inputting the culverts, and is there like some super observers in some of your communities that, yeah? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of times it's, like the IGAP coordinators are super helpful. And yeah, there's definitely, we find in a lot of places there's 1-2 folks that are extremely engaged, and yeah, they're great. They make it all happen.
All right. It looks like Anne has made it. Thank you, Anne. We
Awesome.
know that the time differences are amazing. Anne's made it here, and Anne is gonna give us a little info on her project in Norway. Rich local knowledge despite high transience in Arctic communities experiencing rapid environmental change.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so sorry. And I checked so many times the time difference and I didn't get it to work. I'm very sorry. So, and I'll just try and find the presentation here. What if I then do it like this?
Do it.
We
Yeah,
see it.
excellent.
Perfect.
Thank you. Okay, I will start now. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited. So I'm Anne-Eileen Leonard. I'm an environmental anthropologist at the University of Greenland. So I've been working quite a lot with local knowledge and indigenous knowledge, but called Svalbard, which is quite far up north. You can see in the square, you can see how big it is, and there lives approximately 2,530 people there. They have no indigenous communities either. So people are there in connection to give sovereignty of that island. And what I'm going to be talking today, observations made by these people living and traveling and exploring Svalbard. And also exploring this in connection with long-term monitoring, because as you know, when we do research, normally when they do monitoring, it's always in a short term. So for 3 funding, or you have time series or knowledge gaps. So how can we actually connect this to long-term monitoring? And first of all, I just want to, because this is quite important and we're going to be talking about this island, is also the sense of place, what that is, and that is an emotional attachment to a place. And it is the lens through which people experience and make meaning of their experiences in and with a place. And this can be through both also the senses, it can be memories, it can be experience, stories, imagination, emotions, a lot of different things. And what we see on Svalbard is that there is a population with a high transient. So these people, when people move to Svalbard, they move there because they want to experience the wilderness. They come there to live for 2 to 4 years approximately, and then many of them come there to be outdoors. There's actually not so much else to do. And that's also why what we saw here is that they have a unique environmental knowledge because of their sense of place and the strong attachment and use of the surrounding. And this attachment comes from this use of surrounding, and that everybody has the same, value of the environments that is surrounding them. So how do we map the knowledge and observations? Well, first, and this is also, we used a lot of different tools, community science tools. One of the tools was a Maptionnaire, which is a tool, GIS tool, online tool, where we reached a wide group of people, so they could go in and they could register observations of land and landscape, plants and animals, as you can see in the legends. And we did it in different languages. So it was both in Norwegian, it was in English because there are many foreigners as well, and then also in Russian because there is a Russian settlement there as well, Barentsburg. And also what we saw was that the local observation and narratives cover a large geographical area. You can see it's all over the island. And it's a quite big island, so people are moving around everywhere. We also did interviews and focus groups. And these interviews we did snowball sampling, but we also did it to get more in-depth narratives to these observations which were pointed out on the online tool, but also to get a wider representation and perception. So if we could see that we were missing maybe a group of knowledge holders, they could also be some who had been living there for a longer time, but it could also be those who work as tourist guides or those who are educators. Then we would invite them in, and everybody contributed in their own unique way. It was really, really fantastic. And then we also used social media actually, and it became quite important because it was a really unique tool to both communicate the project, but it also invited people to engage and give ownership to them, and a lot of people shared knowledge through the Instagram account to what they had said. So actually became one of our most important voice, both in communicating the project, but also gathering knowledge as well. And what we then did was that with all these observations that we got from people, both through the PPGIS and the focus group interviews and the social media, was that we put it into a cognitive map. And a cognitive map is like a valuable tool for developing a qualitative model of a given system and how it operates. And this contributed as like an inductive data analysis. So it gave like a bird's eye view of the data that we have. And what you can see, there are all these dots here. And there's like the legends that we had of ice and snow, land and landscape. And you can see all of these are connected. And these are the observations and the narratives and the knowledge that the local people shared. It's how they connect the environments. So what we saw was when we collated all this is that there is actually a quite unique pool of environmental knowledge and a system understanding of what people know about what is surrounding them. And we think this is pretty unique. So even though they haven't lived there for a long time because there's so much outdoors, they can actually contribute with things as well. And we gathered around 250 registrations in this way, and there's living those 2,500 people. So I think it's a quite good amount that we gathered. And what we could gather is also things that we also see other places as well. Like if we go through this travel here to a traverse cabin, it could be about infrastructure, mold, nesting sites of the Arctic skua, which has changed because of permafrost. So this was knowledge of permafrost. It could be about sea ice and snow conditions, so change of seasons, iciness, stronger meltwater flows, different weathers, microclimates. It could also be how environments are changing, like the change of seasons, the rain, landslides, meltwater, that you suddenly can't pass rivers or you're jumping all over the wet place to find your way because it's so wet and it wasn't like that before. Then it's also all landslides, again, about thawing permafrost, landscape change, weather and precipitation. It can also be like the coastline is changing. So somebody's saying every time I go kayaking, the coastline has changed. But also it could be stories when people are walking outdoors, they can say the air smells different. It's as if it smells and tastes different. It has changed. And this can be also the indication of that it has become much more humid in the area because of this change in precipitation that is also not as cold and dry as it was before. It can be disappearing of ice bridges, so change of seascapes and icescapes, and change of ice conditions, change in temperatures, and also how they compared over several years. And then also crevasses, glacial changes over time, mobility and safety was all over the place, that before you could see where you could go, but through a whole season, but now it's every day you go out, it has changed because the environments and the ice and everything is moving so fast. So you cannot follow the routes that you used to. You have to be aware all the time. So it's pretty dangerous. And then, of course, it's knowledge about polar bears with cubs, that there are more in this area, or that there's a large abundance of reindeers as well. So what did we learn from this community science and also this transient community? What we learned was that our participants expressed that long-term monitoring results would help them both oversee longer time horizons. That was something that they expressed. But also the participants reflected on how they are impacted by the changes in terms of both emotions, their sense of place, mobility, and the safety logistic issues, but also ethical dimensions as well. And they also mentioned that mapping, assessing the dimensions of long-term scientific monitoring, usually when we have that on Svalbard, it is quite intensive, the monitoring that is happening there. But it's only focused on 2 or 3 areas on Svalbard, on the west coast. And then also when we have monitoring, it's usually focused on individual categories or disciplines and variables. But what we saw when people were, expressing something about a change in the landscapes, it was an interdisciplinary view, because you want to try and find meaning of the changes you're seeing. So you were coupling it in an interdisciplinary, or I would say a holistic manner. So people were, connecting the elements. So for them, it was more like an interdisciplinary interpretation, holistic interpretation. So that was quite interesting as well. But it also showed possibilities here on this island, because it's this network of observations. You can see on A, these are routes with snowmobile in winter time. And then on the image B, you can see all the registrations of both ice and snow and ocean and sea, how they're connected to these areas. And when you look at these routes and the observations, that might be an identification of monitoring needs when we think about movement and safety and well-being. So it can help us indicate what is important to monitor for people moving around. But also it can also show that there's an incredible infrastructure to do community science and citizen science on this island here, because people are moving so much around. And then instead of just having 2 localities where you really focus your research, you can actually spread it out even further around. So I think that is quite unique. But also what happened was, when we look at this figure on the right-hand side, you can see these are the things that people thought should be, monitored or further researched. So it was safety monitoring when we talk about snow and ice, avalanches, sea ice. In land and landscapes, it was landslide, permafrost erosions, or microclimates in the weather and extreme weather events. And then animals, it was mostly the geese, that there is a majority of geese, as we're also seeing other places in the Arctic, which changes the whole terrestrial, the fauna and everything. And then there is walrus and reindeer population. But we started to question, because some of these things are actually already being extensively monitored. So the reindeer has been monitored for many years, since the 70s. So we started to think, so is the monitoring and research done on Svalbard visible and accessible and relevant for the publics, and meeting the needs identified for them? So first of all, this community science study could show what is important to be monitored, but also show what research we're actually doing by monitoring that has to be communicated better to the local community, or more accessible to the local community, so that they can use it. And that we also saw that there are great opportunities for increasing the relevance and inclusiveness of long-term monitoring of environmental change. And that even though we have this long-term monitoring, it's not holistic. And there are many gaps near and far that local observations can fill. So many of the things we see on Svalbard are also the same things that we see many other places in the Arctic as well, which is quite interesting. So to end my words, it's not about gathering knowledge, but also how you gather it, of course, what tools you use to understand and link the narratives, and how it can contribute in a wide context and in a meaningful way. Thank you. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Anne.
Yeah.
For sharing your work.
Yeah, thank you.
we will open it up for some questions. All right, it looks like, Anne, would you show the little slide before the references slide again?
Yeah, I'll just 1 second. I'll just.
People want links, Anne, after they wanted to know how to do cognitive
In the
mapping.
chat is fine too. I
Yeah.
really love that talk, Anne, and I would love
Oh,
to
thank you.
learn more about your work.
Was it this one?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, but these are different projects. But should I just write my email in? Do you have it?
There you go. Cool.
Yeah, and just a heads up too, we will post the PDFs of the presentations attached to the abstract. So for those that are allowing us to do that. So just a heads up that you will get, for most of these people presenting, you'll get a PDF.
Okay. I hope I didn't scare you. It's just quiet.
Awesome.
But it's a different way. Like I haven't worked with transient knowledge before. So you think, is there anything there? And it was actually quite surprising. And of course, like I've been working a lot with indigenous knowledge and traditional knowledge. And sometimes we maybe also forget that there are other knowledge systems that also can contribute in places where we don't have indigenous communities. And that can be also a great help.
Yeah, really neat. All right. Should we launch into the speed talks? All right. So the next few talks, you'll have 5 minutes. So get ready, Alexandra. You got 5 minutes. And we'll have Alexandra kick us off from University of Oulu, Finland. And then that'll be followed up by Stuart Anderson from McMaster University in Canada. And then if Anastasia shows up, we'll have Anastasia come. And if she doesn't, we'll have more time for questions. So we'll do these back to back and then open up for questions. All right. Ready, set, go, Alexandra.
Okay, good morning, everyone who is in Alaska just now. It's quite late in Oulu already. I'm Alexandra Middleton from Oulu, Finland, and in my presentation, I will share with you the case study of Oulu University acting as a catalyst for citizen science in the Arctic. So, in this case study, I will focus on the integration of citizen science within a strategic framework and the implications it has in a broader context for society and economy of the region. So City of Oulu is a central hub in northern Finland, and it's quite a strategic city with quite large population in Finland. It's the 5th largest city, and it's located about 600 kilometers north of Helsinki. And it's known for its technology and for Nokia in past. University of Oulu was established 66 years ago. It has 8 faculties, very much focused on research, but also education. And the focus of university is that the research that is done there has to benefit and contribute to the local people, to the northerners. And this is quite evident in all strategic documents of the university. And as it states here, we have a particular responsibility toward questions related to the Arctic. And in this research, I view strategy as a process of institutionalization. And if you think about institutionalization, it means that certain concepts become ingrained into the fabric of organization and become recognized as practice. And this could be done through rules, procedures, practices, but also through beliefs and attitudes. And it has been demonstrated before already that strategy can work in this way. So what's unique about University of Oulu that it has an overarching strategy, but apart from that, it also has a specific Arctic strategy. And it was created because of the unique challenges that the Arctic region is facing. It's climate change, it's globalization, and it's also mega trends. And the goals of the strategy of Arctic in University of Oulu is to create Arctic society knowledge, and also to leverage opportunities and contribute to the ecological, social, political, and economic development of the Arctic, and also foster collaboration with stakeholders. It was finalized in 2022 with a very close collaboration with stakeholders and inputs from employees as well. So here's the representation of this Arctic strategy, and we see that in the heart is sustainable Arctic knowledge, and there are three pillars: so environment, then it's resilience and natural resources. But it's all supported through networks and cooperation, infrastructures and digitalization, and citizen science plays a very focal point in order to create linkages and knowledge sharing between all these three pillars. So we see that citizen science becomes like a woven value and a fabric, and also a belief within organization, and becomes part of organizational culture when it's put so strong in the strategic documents. And we have to see and monitor how actions actually will be represented in the future, and then we can see what are the visible outcomes. But so far we see that this type of collaborations fosters data sharing and co-creation, and connects university and all the stakeholders within it. So thank you so much. And I'm also here representing Finland as a citizen science ambassador for European Citizen Science Project. So if you're interested in that project and in the database they have and tools, I will be happy to share it with anyone who is interested in that.
Thank you, Alexandra. This is so cool to see an entire institution, university institution, putting it into the heart of their programs. Wow. I'm going to talk to our university leaders next. We are going to move on before we open it up to questions. We'll move on to Stuart Anderson from McMaster University. You ready, Stuart? You got 5 minutes.
Okay, hang on to your seats because I'm gonna blast through this stuff. So hello, my name is Stuart Anderson. I'm here representing all these nice people on the screen there from McMaster University and the Nunavut Research Institute. My project name is Evolving Uses of Technology in Nunavut Research Practice, how physical, health, and social scientists use technologies to collaborate, conduct, and report on research. So I'm partnering with the NRI, so I developed my research question alongside them, which is how has the use of technologies evolved alongside research practice when collaborating, conducting, and reporting on research in Nunavut? A little quick overview of, I've just put my little framework in there, for which I developed from Ayikatiginik and Pirihikatiginik research methodologies in order to answer my objectives, which are to identify effective communication technologies used by researchers to collaborate with community partners, characterize which and how technologies are used to conduct research in field and community-based research, explore technologies used for knowledge mobilization, examine the infrastructure, accessibility, and community factors affecting choice of technologies, assess how technologies in Nunavut have changed over time, and then exploring all of this through the licensed research from the NRI, which is physical health and social science. Again, so working with the NRI, we developed my methodology to do this, which is using a CIRVIC, the the NRI licensing database. I was able to identify the top 20 license holding principal investigators in Nunavut. They were also able to, many of them gave me referrals, which included 20 Nunavut-based participants. And so they were all engaged with through semi-structured interviews, which were all virtual, partially because I started this in COVID, but also because of the wide breadth and geographical distance for many Canadian researchers, but also abroad. So this just this was a technology I was able to use to connect with these people. So a little results or preliminary results from this. So I've so far I've interviewed 49. Had 49 interviews, 38 of which were with principal investigators, and 11 so far are with referrals, 12 from physical science, 19 from health, and 18 from social. Though it's interesting to note that people with like a social science license might actually be an ecologist, so their background might be different than the license they actually hold. Most of the PI affiliations are with universities, academic institutions, followed by government. Though it's interesting with health, they are not based on a CIRVIC, they're not labeled as being associated with the government, but they're associated with hospitals instead. To analyze this data and this information, I'm using Megan Cope's CRAFT method, which is conditions, relationships, actions, feelings, and themes. So what kind of conditions, like their discipline or their institution or the type of project are they working on? What relationships are needed to use the technology and which ones are established through that technology? How is the technology used? Who can use it? And how and where is training done? What's the expertise? How do people feel about technological change or the choice that they're given, or just the idea of having to use a certain technology? And then types of themes like optimal community-based research technologies, this idea of simple, basic, or invisible technologies, such as it actually is invisible in this picture on the right. The ulu would have been used or was used to prepare the seal skin there, and then you would consider this to be a simple technology. Then you have social media, Facebook versus Twitter. What's the preference in use? Satellite technology is both used for communication, but also conducting research. And then this idea for me of technology as a medium or a media or a facilitator, something in between the environment and our knowledge of it, or between a group of people and our understanding of them, or the body and how we understand health. So my next steps, I am still undergoing interviews, getting more community and northern-based perspectives, but I'm hoping to visit significant scientific communities where scientists either conduct their research or pass through on their way to a site or community. So I'm proposing Cambridge Bay, Iqaluit, Arviat, and Resolute Bay. Hoping to verify information that people have told me in the interviews. Not that I don't believe anybody's being distrustful or anything like that, but sometimes what people say is a little different than what they do. So I'd like to look at what available technologies and types of research are there, and then what kind of community engagement does exist. And then hoping myself to bring some benefits to these communities by bringing my camera along. I'm a big fan of video and photography, to help of the facility, give that back to them. If they needed an inventory of the technology that are available at their site. And hopefully I can help improve communications or guide communications between organizations within a community, but also outside in the broader research community. And then an extra set of hands just for daily tasks. In some cases, I know this is greatly beneficial just for everyday stuff. So that's all I've got. Got a few references there. Thank you very much. And if anybody wants to talk about stuff, I have a little appendix here of my codes, and I'd love to talk about any of these terms.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you to Alexandra. We'll open it up for questions. We don't see Anastasia here, but I just wanted to check if anybody from the Association of Polar Early Career Scientists had been redelegated the task of giving this talk. No? Yeah? Okay. All right. Does anybody have questions for Alexandra or Stuart or any of the prior speakers?
I'm just impressed with all of the presentations. I'm trying to run the meeting, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, that sounds so interesting. Oh, I want to hear more about that. So I think, I'm glad that you're all here presenting, because these are, I think every single presentation has been new from 2021. There wasn't anything that we had a repeat for. And so it's great to see what kind of work you're all doing. And I hope we can, continue learning from you all.
Anne, go ahead.
Hi, I can't put on my video right now because I'm not in a place to do that. But the Svalbard presentation, if she could let me know if she is working with anybody in emergency management. Has she reached out to anybody related to that with what she's found? And if not, I have a suggestion. Or if she's interested.
I'm always interested to hear what you would propose. Right now, I am in a panel for permafrost, also on Svalbard, and how one can, mitigate the what's happening in connection with that when it's melting. So all the things in connection with the landslides on land. But otherwise, no.
Well, I have a colleague that is under one of my projects for a NSF grant. Her name is Dina Brode-Roger. She's in SSI. Do you know her?
I know her, yes.
Yeah, so I would really love it if she's actually working with me on a project called Perseus, which is perception of risk, communication and interpretation and action in social ecological systems. And your work would go really well. She's doing what she's calling focus groups. I work in the North Slope Borough. So we're comparing Svalbard, Canadian Arctic, and the North Slope Borough about risk assessment related to disaster risk reduction. And she's approached, we're doing like community organizations, not individuals. Like, I think you're mostly doing individuals, right?
It's individuals, yeah, or like smaller groups, but mainly individuals, yes.
Yeah, so I think your all's data would really be interesting to compare. So I am going to send an email out, everybody. I know you guys are going, why can't you talk about this offline? But it's really cool, okay? And it's like your sense of place. I mean, she will love this. If you know Dina, she will love what you're doing. Yeah, so let's see if we can do some partnering. That's what this is all about, right?
That's right, Anne.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Anne's last name is Garland. She only has Anne written on there, but so to connect. KK, I'm so happy on how active you are in the chat. You're keeping us alive and awake in the chat here, KK Davis. Thank you. Same with you, Rami Wood. It looks like we got a couple of really good questions coming through the chat. We have a question from Mike. The presentations were all super interesting. I'm wondering whether one of the presenters sees any opportunities to create links with students or people from non-Arctic states in a citizen science framework. Yeah, so this could go to anybody, but Alexandra, from your university framework, do you see any connections to other institutions or programs from outside of the Arctic? Yeah, good.
Well, I think the focus is more on the local stakeholders, like local businesses and because the businesses are so international here in the whole region, that the technology is reaching everywhere. So this way, I guess. But I think with the non-Arctic states, it could be done within a third polar framework where the changes are happening in the Himalaya region, for instance, for observation of thawing of glaciers and other climate change related changes.
Yeah, thanks for that, Alexandra. Stuart, I know that your question is really on those principal investigators in your region, but do you think it would be different for non-Arctic investigators? And did you think about expanding beyond your region?
Not so much, just because of like Nunavut's big enough for trying to finish my PhD. It's already too big. Like I want to do so, like, you know, I want to visit all these sites and I want to go to more and I want to see it all and I want to understand it all. So just for just Nunavut, it's big enough for my particular project. That doesn't mean it can't be. That doesn't mean we can't learn from other regions or apply what I've learned to other regions. And then some of the researchers, some of the PIs, you know, they've worked in Nunavik and they've worked in like other areas of Inuit Nunangat. So then there's some comparative aspects to it. And then when they like I can't remember the name of the place. It's northern Quebec, so there was a connection between both like Inuit and Cree people in a spot, and so he had some reflections on that and how science communication was going in that particular community. And so even though that wasn't in Nunavut, like I'll flag something like that. It's like, okay, if that's something that worked, then maybe we want to think about that in Nunavut communities as well. So it doesn't, you know, that doesn't limit us. I think in research we do this, right? We pick from other places and say, well, you worked here, well, this work here as well. Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of rambling on that, but yeah, it's definitely all interesting, and I think it can definitely be applied elsewhere. Like I didn't come into my project considering the Arctic specifically. I was very interested in what are scientists using, how do they understand the information that they're receiving, and how is this information then presented back to a particular audience.
I think tomorrow you're going to have major synergy with another PhD student presenting on scientist perceptions of this sorts of work too. I hope you two connect. Sarah Clement is the presenting tomorrow. One of the questions that we got for you, Stuart, is from Stinnett, and they're interested in you elaborating on data sovereignty and community consultation process. And then, of course, if you could flash up your codes again, because you gave that teaser. But
Sure.
first, do the data sovereignty, and then
yeah, I'll try to multitask here while I'm doing this.
Okay.
Because I want to try to share it at the same time. Yeah, so it's tough, and I've had a tough time with that, just because like I'm not working with a particular community. I'm looking at all of Nunavut, so I'm looking at the entire, like I'm working with the NRI. So when I've had to try to define who my community is, like that's who my community is. It is essentially the research community, but it's NRI specifically, and they want to do a good job of licensing properly and following up on that licensing, you know, on those projects, and making sure that their projects that they're licensing and that they're I guess governing over, like under the Scientists Act in Nunavut. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. So working with them to make sure that the research is being done in a meaningful way. So that's why I'm working with them. And as far as like data sovereignty, like so all my information is being as long as they don't opt out, that's an option in my consent form. But if they don't opt out, then all my information, all my recordings and everything is being stored at the NRI indefinitely. So then they can hold on to that information, and including all transcripts, like everything that I am producing is going back to them. So as much analysis as I'm doing with it, I'm sure there could be more done if they wish, and if they want to pull more information out of it. I'm trying to code as much as I can that might even be outside of my scope, just to give it flags like, hey, this is something interesting. It's not something I want to look at, but it is definitely it relates to research practice. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, cool. And thanks for letting your codes linger up here. This is really wonderful. We are a minute past when we have to. Lisa, you didn't even have to interrupt. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling proud of myself. I see, Anne, a question that your hand is raised, but maybe I wonder if we can do that in the chat. What do you think?
It was just a very, very short comment.
Okay. Cool.
For the last the question before, because the research I have done is of course in the Arctic, but it's not with a really Arctic community, even though because they have lived there for such a short term. So I would really like to do this, implement the tools, combining these different citizen science tools or community science tools to the Arctic, other places. So I want to reverse that question and say that I would really love to play with it other places, combining these tools together and see what you get out of it, including the cognitive mapping. So it's just that.
Oh, Anne, I'm in the North Slope Borough. Come visit.
Get the Anns together across the globe. Very cool. Very cool. Such a good idea. All right. So Janet's gonna kick us into the break here and maybe do a prize.
Yeah, I'm still, oh, there we go. Yeah, thank you very much. So, thanks, Katie, for helping out on all the presentations, and thanks again to all of our presenters. We have more talks coming up after our break, but before we go, as I mentioned at the opening, we do have door prizes, and our it's for people that are present today. And so with that, oh no, I just lost the person, Tina Geller from CU Boulder. You're our first prize winner. Again, these are $25 US dollars. E-gift certificates. So Judy with Arcus will be in touch with you about which prize location you want to have your e-certificate come from. And yeah, congratulations and thanks for being here, Tina. Woohoo! I'm just going to tell you, Tina, that Collective 49 is a very, very tempting artist place. So it's just sharing. With that, Zeb, you can push out the next slide for break. We are going to break and we will be back here at 10:25 a.m. Alaska Daylight Time, or 25 after whatever hour you're working from. Be sure to check out the community site. I'm hoping that some of the conversations that have been happening here happen over there. Yeah, and have a good break. We'll see you all soon.
All right, everyone, I think let's wrap up the break and head on back to the conference, Community and Citizen Science in the Far North 2024. I just joined. My name is Audrey Taylor. I've been on the steering committee for this conference and also for the previous one. I've been on the board of directors at Arcus for about 6 years. I've taken a couple years off now. We're sailing as a family in around the Pacific Ocean, which is why on the conference program it says with next to my name, my location is Pacific Ocean. Thanks for that, Janet. But it's nice to see everyone on here, and I think we should jump in and get started. We're going back into our second main session of the day, which includes both plenary talks, which are roughly 13 minutes, a couple minutes for questions, and then 5-minute lightning talks with a single Q&A session at the end. So just hold questions for those until the end of the whole session of lightning talks. I'm sure I don't need to remind people, abstract details can be found on the website. And if you have a question that you're not prepared to say aloud, you can stick it in the chat because we'll be monitoring that. And also I'm hoping to continue some of these conversations over on our community website, which I believe the link to has been posted in the chat previously. So welcome back, everyone. I think we'll just jump in. Our first presentation is Arctic HABs, a case study in Utqiagvik, Alaska, by Anne Garland from Applied Research in Environmental Science in Virginia. Welcome, Anne.
Well, good morning. Where I am, it's afternoon because I'm in Virginia. So I'm going to thank everybody for letting me give this little talk. It's actually a story. I'm going to do a little storytelling. Katie will appreciate that. So I'm going to give a little story about how we ended up into HABs in the Arctic. Just everybody know what HABs are? If anybody does not know, raise your hand virtually so I can explain the science of it, because I don't have that in here. I have lots of hyperlinks, FYI, for the science part, but this is more of a story. So I'm going to run through the slides really quick and I can answer. So harmful algal blooms is what HABs stands for. And you're going to learn a little bit about the consequences of having these in your waterways in this talk. Unfortunately, folks, it is now in the Arctic. And the rest of the world has had to deal with this for generations now. But because of warmth, etc. Yeah. So let's find out a little bit about how we're handling it in the North Slope Borough. So I represent a nonprofit, Applied Research in Environmental Sciences, and we've been working with the Emergency Management Office up there for quite a while. But I give credit to all of our community-based monitors. We have like 3 or 4 different citizen science projects. We're going to be talking about just one today, and all the folks that are so involved in them. I have to, give them their credit for sure, because I wouldn't be doing any of this without their interest, the borough's interest, etc. So a little bit about who we are as a nonprofit. I'm not going to read it over. You can read it. But as you can see, it's like really focused on applied research and working with the public in different capacities. A little bit of background. I started in disaster risk reduction, which is what this is all about, working with emergency management, because I was on in a Center for Excellence, one of the very first one they set up after 9/11. It's called CREATE, and there's a hyperlink if you want to go learn more about what they did. They're in emeritus status now. We went from 2006 to 2016, so I was with them for 10 years. And the project I was on was called Working Together for a Safer Tomorrow, and it was about tribal inclusive geographic areas. So we're always looking at the dynamics between non-tribal and tribal related to DRR, or disaster risk reduction, or emergency management, or fire, or search and rescue. And my colleague was an American Indian. He was Oneida. So, and he would always send me to the difficult places. He says, "Ann, you're a woman, you got white hair. They'll respect you." So he always sent me the places that were harder to communicate with, I guess. I don't know. I never found any problem, but with that, regardless, I had great experience for 10 years. And so these are some of the major projects I worked on, not the only ones, but related to HABs. Was this effort to try and figure out what the verbal or contract or mutual aid was across jurisdictions. So those are 2 projects that brought me to the Arctic first. And we're using a theoretical perspective called historical ecology, and I've now applied it to risk management. I'm going to give a short little shout out for it because it includes so much convergent science, very transdisciplinary, very applied, very systems oriented. I recommend anybody who's interested to take a look at it as a model that you might want to apply to what you're doing these days. Okay, so we obviously especially focus on disaster risk reduction, so we cannot leave the youth out because they're the next generation. So that's why that's part of our name, Hermes. And we have done lots of different kinds of projects with youth, but including this one. You're going to love some of the pictures I have, hopefully. All right, so there is a credit to right now or being funded by an NSF, Navigating the New Arctic. And if you click on this NSF image, you will go to our what we are, but I'm not going to go into all of that because I don't have time. Leave it to say it's all about maritime traffic in the Arctic, and obviously pollution and all that kind of stuff related to it. Effluents is a nutrient load, so that's why we're using HABs as a way to help understand what's going on in the biochemistry. This is a little bit about the model that I was using when I was with DHS, and that's basically what I'm still using. And it's, it's holistic in the sense that we're looking at all jurisdictions. But for those who don't know, some of well, in Canada, especially, and not so much in Svalbard, but there is very complex jurisdictions and ownership, land ownership. So a lot of this does apply, even though we're not talking borough to borough, although I definitely get involved in that as well, or cross countries. We apply a lot of our stuff across the Arctic, Pan-Arctic. So just to let you know, I started up there in 2007 because DHS sent me there, and I was using their funding until they closed in 2016 to do a lot of these projects. Been funded in different ways since then. But I just wanted you to know the long-time relationship started with the Emergency Management Office in 2007 during IPY. And we started this concept of historical ecology. We asked them what their main hazard scope was, what was the most priority. We tried to follow that in what we came up with our model for historical ecology. And this is a little bit of what they were exposed to as to why we were using this theoretical perspective. And we also try to make it as user-friendly as possible. And I approached the school district and asked them if I could use their learning framework, which is basically historical ecology and all of its different goals there. And the little image down at the bottom is what they use and they teach in their school district about the learning framework. So I asked them if I could take that and use it for hazard mitigation in our project with emergency management. And this is what we came up with, kind of a schematic of theirs with priorities of things that we want to study and convergence of different sciences. So this is a rundown real quick. I don't have everything on here, but you can see we retarget a lot of disaster risk reduction stuff. You can see some of the community-based monitoring projects, including the one I'm going to talk about. By the way, the name of, I've never mentioned this in my talks, but Coastal Observers of Barrow was not my idea. It came from the monitors. They decided that's what they wanted to call themselves. So we have used it since. And when we train, we always go over the community-based monitoring perspective. These are slides from the slideshow when I do field training. Sorry, not field training, but when I do recruitment to make sure that people understand the dynamics of how important community-based monitoring is, as well as all the ones that are out there in Alaska doing great work. And then we always go over what the definition of citizen science is and what the limitations are in the professional world. I won't go over all those because all of us know how many times we've had to answer these questions. So harmful algal blooms, we use since 2016 a methodology that everybody uses across the country, the NOAA Phytoplankton Monitoring Network. We participate in the Alaska Harmful Algal Bloom Network. I highly recommend that if anybody wants to get into this. It's a great way to connect a network across Alaska for people who are dealing with this terrible hazard now. And we also started this baseline in 2016. When I first started it, everybody thought, what are you talking about? Why would you want to stop monitoring along the coast for HABs in the Arctic? Well, you know, how many years later, it's now for sure. So at least we have a date baseline from the nearshore aspect of Utqiagvik of what was there before what they have found since we started. So recruitment has been a real big issue. I'm trying to get people to buy into this because of what I just said, because most people thought we were crazy. But I had devoted monitors who wanted to focus on this. Laura Thomas, who's listed as my co-author for this project, is the lead community monitor. She is now in public health. She and I are both archaeologists by training, but she decided she wanted to go into the health field. So she just got her RN license this December, I think it was. So hallelujah, because and she's working for public health. So it's awesome because she knows all about this. And now we have somebody in the public health department who can help educate the nurses and the doctors about this and what kind of exposure and what kind of symptoms that might be coming or are already there and people aren't identifying them. That could possibly be the case too. NSF has always had a veterinarian pathologist who did samples of all the harvested mammals and was tracking, you know, all kinds of toxicities, including those that come from harmful algal blooms. So they've had this in their subsistence toxicity studies for a long time, but that's just a sample. And we were the only ones starting it with a water sample ahead of time. And you can see in some of these pictures on the Team Thomas is what I call them, because Laura's kids loved going out there and doing the tow net. And you can see them in different places on the lagoons and on the near shore and how we were doing it and helping Laura identify under the microscope all the critters that we are finding in the water and trying to find out if there are any nasties in there. We've been really lucky and have not found any near shore. We don't know why, because we now know from cruises, which I'm going to talk about next, that they are out there. So we're trying to figure that out, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But the microscope was gifted to us. I have to give credit to the Harmful Algal Bloom Network. So we got two, and they take pictures. We can take pictures and send slideshows to folks to ID stuff, and we can also, it has a nice little, what do you call it, video possibility, so you can turn it around and train with it. So we've been trying to do workshops, get ready to do workshops, but every time we start doing that, we get a little concerned because of the anxiety level that this is going to create. Is that time's up already? Yeah?
That was the 13-minute mark to leave 2 minutes for questions. So you can talk through your question.
Yeah. So just real quick, this is the food web impacts of those who don't know anything about HABs. This is a very sensitive topic in subsistence communities. And we're trying to figure out how to roll this out for outreach and education. The cruise results, this is some of the examples of how dense the cyst beds are off of Point Barrow and a couple other places based on Don Anderson's work at Woods Hole. And I have hyperlinks in here for you guys. You can go and study or read what the reports are right now. So what we've decided is to start a local advisory committee, which we started. And our problem was we can't get any government department right now to lead it, not even emergency management, because it's such a sensitive topic. So this is some tasks that we're working with our local advisory committee on to decide how much they want to do, and we are going to be paying them. We do pay our monitors, by the way. Nobody's mentioned that yet, but we pay our monitors unless they're with IGAP or something. Yeah. And so this is our continued directions, and this is my last slide, is just that we are trying to come up with funding to actually study the cyst bed, which is unbelievably large, according to Don Anderson, compared to other places. Nobody knows why. So that's what this focus is to try and figure out with certainty what this bed is doing, where the blooms are going. We know that there are blooms out there because we hear about them from boaters. Anyway, you can read over that and understand the complexity we have to deal with right now between the social and ecological science to figure out what the heck is going on for sure. But we do know it's up there. And that's some flyers some of my kids have made. But I would love any feedback that you guys have. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anne. That was really interesting. We are just about at the end of our time. So it looks like we've got a couple questions in the chat. So if you want to swing over, can you monitor the chat, Anne?
I will, yes.
Maybe that'd be a good place to answer. It looks like
how much do
got a couple
I pay
questions.
the monitors? It depends on, well, we have I have a contract with all of them through Aries. So it really depends on the statement of work and what they're willing to do, right? Because this is just a part-time moonlight kind of thing. So it varies all over the place. That's the best I can say, but I can give you some, if you want to just email me, you're welcome to do that. And I can let you know more specifics. Yes, there are dinoflagellates. Yes. Who use the microscope? How much do you pay and how do we use it? Who uses it? All the monitors are right now the monitors are trained to identify it. So the monitoring network program actually trains you to ID stuff, and they're really good at, you know, if you have a problem, letting them know, sending pictures, sending samples. We save samples, and if we find something, it's a presence absence monitoring thing, but if you find something, you take the sample and preserve it and send it off. Yes, they could, and they do.
I'm gonna speak in here as the timekeeper and say, Anne, could you please answer the questions in the chat?
Sure, will do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. That was really fascinating, and I'd love to hear more about this program as you continue to work on it. And I hope you get the next round of funding. We're going to move along and introduce our next plenary speaker. Louise Mercer from Northumbria University will be talking about successes, challenges, and recommendations from the first year of an Indigenous-led community-based contaminant monitoring program. Welcome, Louise.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and hello to everyone else who's in European time for the evening. Yeah, I'm really happy to be presenting today. I'm presenting on behalf of myself and my community partner, Diva Lynn Polkiak's research. She is a mom, subsistence harvester, and a community liaison for the Nuna project in the hamlet of Tuktoyaktuk. So yeah, this is our research that I'm presenting on today, and I'm just going to give you an overview of how we set up a little pilot study that led into a larger Indigenous-led program, a community-based monitoring program. So just a bit about me. I really enjoyed seeing the photos earlier, so I added some in. So I'm from a traditional family farm in Scotland, and recently I've been reflecting on how that links to my work. And I think it does in a way. I think when I spend time in the Arctic, I connect a lot through family stories of relatives in Scotland, but also just being out on the land and learning different approaches for harvesting and things like that. And I think, yeah, so I'm really proud to be Scottish and from my roots. And I just think it's a great way that I found connection from when I'm working in the Arctic as well. And then I do have a background in citizen science, so I went and supported a citizen science program in Utah, the Boreal Toad Citizen Science Project, where I helped support a lot of volunteer training. We did a lot of presence absence surveys for rare species of toad, but that gave me a real interest in citizen science and community-based monitoring. And then that led me to do a PhD at Northumbria University, where I'm now supporting community-based monitoring, and as part of the Nuna project, which is a Canada Inuit Nunavut UK Arctic research program. And there's a strong emphasis on partnership development and self-determination in research. And so I'm just going to give you an overview of my research approach and how we tried to create a really inclusive approach, but also one that addresses community priorities. So just to give everyone an overview, Tuktoyaktuk is in the Nunavut settlement region, right at the top of Canada. And that's where the case study I am presenting today is from. So just to give you an overview, this is our approach we have developed, me and Diva, over the past 3 years now. It's changed a lot, but this is kind of what we're setting on just now. So it all started with early dialogue. So I went to Tuk and spent a couple of months out there over the summer and winter periods. And I think this was a really key part of my research and just learning. So I just spent time listening and learning. I spent a lot of time with the fishing nets, where I created great connections with the Pokiak family. And also I gained experience with a pre-existing community-based monitoring program. And just through spending time assisting with their work and just going out on the land with them, I learned a lot about the challenges and opportunities associated with community-based monitoring. This was a climate monitoring program, and they went out twice a week to collect samples such as water samples, permafrost measurements and things like that. But I think this time spent just listening and learning from the climate monitors was really key to my research going forward. And it also gave me a lot of time to just spend building a relationship with Diva. So she is a salaried position. I know funding payment was mentioned just in previous presentations. So all her time she spends with this project I'm associated on is paid. So it meant that I was able to support training with Diva, and she was kind of compensated for that time. So we spent a lot of time doing data collection training, looking at simple and standardized methods, but also we talked a lot about data quality and what that looks like, and repeated sampling and things like that. And yes, this was an area that it's sometimes tricky to do in short time-scaled projects, but because I was out there for a couple of months, we had a lot of time to train in other aspects. So we worked a lot on the computer, looking at simple using simple software such as Excel, but to really look at where the data goes once we collect it. I think that's often a step that's usually left to external researchers, but this is something that Diva really wanted to learn, so I spent a lot of time supporting her learn those skills. So every time we went out and collected some samples, we then uploaded it together, and we did this repeatedly, which meant like over time those skills developed, and that was really key. And I think that was one of the training aspects that we actually spent most time on. We spent more time at the computer and learning this data collation and upload skills as opposed to the field collection. And then I spent a lot of months there, as I said, and together me and Diva identified a community priority of contaminants from legacy infrastructure source areas. So then we went on to develop a simple and standardized method, and we really focused on appropriateness of methods collection, and that again was based on my experience with the pre-existing monitoring program that Diva was also a monitor for before she went on maternity leave a few years ago. So we developed a simple and standardized design. As you can see, all our sampling sites were chosen based on time and distance from Diva's location. So we went to location from her workplace, so all samples can be collected within an hour. And that was really important because Diva is a mum. She can't spend all day going out and collecting samples. So this was a way that we were able to ensure that samples could be repeated frequently, but also it didn't take a lot of time out of Diva's day. But we also addressed the community concern as well. So we took water samples before and after storms to see if the storm was releasing any heavy metals or contaminants from different source areas. So we looked at industry, transport, and waste source areas. It also enabled us to, again, just train through the research process. So we had repeated measurements. So we went out a total of, I think it was 6 times in 2 weeks. So that was before and after 3 storm events. And now I'll just talk a bit about the analysis. So we did see there was an impact of storms on heavy metal release from industry source areas in particular. So this is zinc release from industry source areas. And basically, the importance of our approach was showing that community-based monitoring can be used to show temporal trends in contaminant release, but this wasn't a harmful release. It was below all probable effect limits, so we didn't suggest any harmful effect. It was more just showing that there was an effect, and this could be used to monitor those trends. Another area we really wanted to work on was supporting DEVA to gain training in laboratory analysis. This is often hard to do in, the site TAC doesn't have any laboratory facilities, but we were able to include DEVA through getting a bit creative. So even just as simple as filtering water samples, that's quite, even though that's just such a simple type of method or lab method, it still enabled us to go through different steps in training of laboratory training. And also DEVA was really interested in lab training. So our work, which I'll talk a bit about in the future, we were able to implement that interest to support DEVA get more formalized laboratory training. So I'll just talk a bit about our interpretation now. So we presented results together in a variety of formats. So we've been to conferences together, and we've also presented results back to the Hamlet. And those presenting our results back to the Hamlet, not just the Hamlet Council, but also Hunters and Trappers Committee, really guided the next step of our research program. It enabled us to identify what we found, but interpret it together, and then also identify next steps and how we can build from that. But also presenting together at conferences enabled us to not just, present our results, but also give DEVA experience of presenting results, but not by herself. I think my role is also a mentor. So it's really supporting the development of skills for DEVA. And again, DEVA actually really enjoyed presenting. So that's something that we've tried to implement into our future work, but more on her own, not always with my support. And then also we were approached by the Northern Contaminants Programme, and they suggested we write a community-based monitoring and program, community-based monitoring grant, and that's what we did. So one of the biggest outcomes of our program was that we were funded the proposal. And so that this proposal, we wrote it together, but we wrote it to address a community concern of mercury and microplastics. But we also wrote it to address other areas of the research process that the community would like embedded into the program. So from the Hamlet Council meetings and the HDC meetings, it really was an interest in supporting youth engagement, and that's something that DEVA is very passionate about. Also supporting further laboratory training for DEVA, and really enabling DEVA to gain transferable skill sets, but also moving towards more autonomy in the research process. So I'm very much happy to take a supportive role in this and support DEVA to lead the project. And that's something we've been working on over the last year. So this is just an example of some of the sites, all of the sites we chose based on an initial meeting with the Hunters and Trappers Committee. So all the sites are visited once in August to collect sediment and water samples. The sites are then, we then visit a select number of sites over the winter periods to collect water samples. So DEVA is currently getting ready to collect our water samples this week, and then they will be collected before breakup and after ice breakup as well. So in total, we are collecting samples 6 times throughout the course of the year and across seasons. And if we think about payments again, then DEVA is paid to go out and collect the samples, but also do training. And just to give you an overview of what this project is helping do, it's supporting further training, youth engagement, and Diva's now doing a higher education course. But also Diva and Lena Rose, the student, recently presented the results together. So that's just an overview of how it did start between me and Diva, and now Diva's leading it, whereas I'm more of a supportive role. And that's really nice to see. That's just an overview of my key kind of recommendations and takeaways from my research approach, and a couple of papers and project website, and that's it. Thank you very much. Sorry about my job.
We love seeing pets. It's a great icebreaker, so thank you. We've got some positive feedback in the chat and a couple things to share. And does anyone have a question for Louise? We've got just about a minute.
I have a question. First of all, thanks, Louise. Your name looked familiar, and so I was looking back through my emails, and we emailed each other after the first conference a couple of years ago when we were just beginning PhD students and trying to figure out what we were doing. So hi, nice to see you again.
I know. This was a really great conference a couple of years ago. Sorry, please do go on.
Yeah. I'm just curious what plans you have for youth engagement in the future, what that piece looks like for your project.
Oh, yes. So we had a summer student with us last summer, Lena Rose, and she was selected by the school and also the Hunters and Trappers Committee, and she was just really interested in being involved. So she was involved all last summer and then throughout the year as well. So she was presenting recently, and Diva and her, they've become the Diva is now her mentor, and she's involved fully. But we will be working with the school in regards to microplastics collection, and we do hope to get another student intern involved as well as as it progresses.
Awesome, thank you.
No worries.
I think we'll move over to the next presentation, but thank you again, Louise. That was fascinating and a really interesting model. So I hope to continue to hear more about your work as it progresses. The next plenary and the last one in this session is, or I guess the last one before our lightning talks, is by Brandy Kammermans from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and she'll be talking about sovereign autonomy for long-term monitoring of non-human genes, Salmon G, the use of eDNA by community and citizen scientists in the Arctic.
Brandy Yansha, Nahobani Nisna. Good afternoon. My name is Brandy Kammermans. My mother's clan is where the gray streak ends. I am a postdoctoral fellow in the International Arctic Research Center at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And this work is a collaborative effort from a large team of researchers at the University of Alaska Fairbanks in an attempt to produce educational and outreach materials about the use of environmental DNA for natural resource management in Alaska. So today's talk, I will cover 6 different areas. First, I'll do a background on what it is I'm talking about, which is eDNA and PCR. The motivation for our work is genetics for the next generation of Indigenous data scientists. There's 2 slides about my approach, including our team and as well as our Salmon G project. I have a results page based on our work in the last few months, and then talk about our future work with outreach in the summer in the Kuskokwim River Basin. So what is eDNA? eDNA is environmental DNA, and these are images, art created by a graduate student named Maris Goodwin. So in her graphic representation of what eDNA is, she's included an Arctic environment, including macroinvertebrates, as well as some phytoplankton. So eDNA is environmental, or is genetic material that's left in the environment by organisms as they live their life. eDNA is extracted from environmental samples, whether that be air, soil, water, snow, ice, without having to first isolate a target organism. We first started using eDNA back in 1987, and this was mainly by microbiologists. I started using eDNA to look for microorganisms in my traditional homelands in New Mexico back in 2003. But how can we use environmental DNA? We can use environmental DNA to look at both mitochondrial and nuclear DNA from eukaryotic animals. And so this is a graphic that Maris has designed that looks at double-stranded DNA and how it's composed of nucleotide bases, and that we can manipulate these bases to try to identify a specific animal from an environment that is of interest to communities. And we do so using a technique called polymerase chain reaction. So what are we talking about here? Well, PCR is the amplification of a specific region of genetic code using chemistry. And this is the ability to produce large quantities of a single region of DNA from a specific species. If we look at this image here, we have a double-stranded DNA shown here in the top left. That's step 1. We denature this DNA. We use what are called DNA primers that anneal to single-stranded DNA. The forward and reverse primers attach to the single-stranded DNA. And then with an enzyme, we're able to replicate the single-stranded DNA back into a double-stranded DNA. And we do this denaturing and annealing step over 40 cycles. And this is the basis for what we do as scientists at the University of Alaska Fairbanks to detect and quantify species of interest. Now, as outreach, people who are interested in education and outreach, our motivation and our long-term goals are to be able to teach Indigenous communities and students about this protocol. And one of the programs that I've been involved with for a couple of years now is called Indigidata, and it's through Dr. Jessica Glass at UAF that I was able to help plan Indigidata at Northwest Indian College last summer. These are training events that show students not only how to conduct a polymerase chain reaction experiment, but also what to do with the data that is produced with these methods. So this is an attempt to look at the demographic makeup of the existing workforce in the fisheries area and how it's not representative of the communities that are living and affected by the research that's done in these places. And so by doing these workshops and these educational outreach activities, we're hoping to reach students and get them interested in pursuing careers in genetics. So while doing these workshops, we're also collecting teams of eDNA trackers, people who are using this technique and looking at the caveats and the nuances that make the technique useful as well as hard to implement in environmental settings, to be able to teach people about these different caveats and so that they're more able to use these in their communities. So this is what we're calling hands-on research. And so this is the Kuskokwim River Basin in southwestern Alaska. We're currently doing research in this area at 3 different weirs, and this is an image of a weir operator collecting what is called an eDNA sample. So we collect eDNA samples by collecting a liter of water at a time and space where we're interested in an organism. In this case, we're interested in Chinook and chum salmon. And so I show this image because it shows somebody who is invested in this space and invested in this organism and the results of these data that we get using eDNA sampling and eDNA techniques. How do we go from having a research project in the community, knowing that people are interested in these techniques, and then producing producing teachable PCR methods? And so one of my colleagues, Kristen Reese, and I applied for a grant from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. It's a SEED grant for an entrepreneurship opportunity. So that's what the sovereignty and autonomy for long-term monitoring of non-human genes is. It's SAMG, and it's a seed grant to pull together money to acquire equipment and also develop curriculum that we can take back into the community and teach people not only how to collect the sample, but also how to analyze that sample using, as I showed previously, the polymerase chain reaction. And there are companies now who are developing these field-ready, field-applicable genetics instrumentation that we can make curriculum for and teach to people. And that's sort of the gap between a company producing these materials and then being able to actually use these materials in the community. And so we have to do so without the use of a laboratory setting, and sometimes would be even without the use of electricity. So we are troubleshooting these different challenges to this work by using this equipment in our homes. So Kristen Reese, in the last couple of months, has been working with her teenage daughters, Avery and Lillian, imaged here. And so one of the best results that I've seen so far is the impact it's had on Kristen's family. So Kristen is an undergrad student at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and her daughters have been listening to her talk about these experiences she's had as a last undergrad working in the genetic setting. And through this program, she's been able to bring these field-based equipment home and troubleshoot how to use this equipment in her home with her daughters. And so you see Avery here, who's age 12, and she's not only learning how to pipette, but she's also troubleshooting how to get around needing electricity or electrical equipment. And so she's spinning down an she's spinning down a sample using the centrifugal force to get around having to use a centrifuge. We also see Lillian, age 16, using pipette. She's done this previously in a high school setting, but she was able to use this and also troubleshoot the chemistry that's involved for gel electrophoresis. And so with the scientific innovations that Avery and Lily and Kristen bring to this project, we're able to start seeing how to use this gel electrophoresis technique with PCR products in Kristen's kitchen. So this is a step towards taking this equipment now out into communities. So that's our future work. We're going to attend the George River internship at the George River Weir in 2024. So middle of July, we're going to spend about 10 days in the community, and we're going to teach 10 to 15 high school students on this internship how to use these handheld PCR equipment and gel electrophoresis gel rigs based on what Kristen's learning in the lab, as well as implementing. We're meeting with Eric Kubal and Dan Gillikin. These are people who are very involved with the students, and every year they have this internship, and every year they have different questions about, oh, I wonder if this location has salmon, or if this location has chum. So we're basing the curriculum with these equipment on the questions that would be relevant to what the high school students are interested in. In addition to that, we're turning Maris's images into a booklet that we can give to students so they can have that for their needs and their interests, and something to look at and reflect on later after we've interacted with the students in the summer. So we're going to be at a base camp with the students. And that's why it's been so important for us to get around not having laboratory equipment. So every step along the way, we have to think about, well, where's the water we're going to use? Is there going to be electricity? Is this going to be in the rain? How do we do this so that the experiment doesn't take 3 hours, it only takes 1 hour, so we don't lose the interest of the student and we don't lose track of the goal of the project? And how do we design this curriculum so that people can see what a negative result is and what a positive result is? And it's been really interesting, and I'm very excited about these trips. So in addition to the George River internship, Kristen, myself, Dr. Eric Shane, Dr. Andres Lopez, and Maris are all going to go to the Science and Culture Camp in Bethel, Alaska. And I just wanted to show the handout for this, the flyer that they're distributing with the QR code in case there's anybody else who's interested in contacting the organizers to attend or participate as presenters. And with that, I'd just like to say, thank you to my colleagues and for people listening to me today.
Great, thank you so much, Brandy. That was really fascinating. We do have just a little bit of time for questions if anybody has one. We've got some positive feedback in the chat too, if you want to head over there and take a look. I really love the model of this presentation and the last one, using moms as sort of a group of people to reach out to that have a bigger impact in the community. As a mom myself, that's just so heartwarming. So thank you. Anybody have a question for Brandy?
I might have missed it. Brandy, do you pay, I mean, I know you said you have students that are probably in school, but I guess is there a payment system too that you use, or stipends?
So, right, through the UAF Center ICE application, I did put in salary to pay Kristen for her work. But she also has funding through the Blast Fellowship. And now that we're applying for more funding, I'm putting in, that's why I was asking, like, how much do I pay people? Because I'm putting into the budget, how much do you pay people per honorarium? How much do you pay people hourly for doing these efforts and helping out with it?
Thanks.
Oh, I'm also looking for funds to pay Maris for her beautiful artwork as well.
Well, thank you again, Brandy. That is just really cool. Do you have a link to the Bethel Science and Culture Camp that you mentioned? If you can stick that in the chat, that would be fabulous. I'd love to look that up. And I think we'll move on to our lightning talks. The first one, as you can see from the agenda, was canceled, so that'll give us a little bit more time for each talk and also for questions at the end. So I think we'll go right into the L5 talk by KK Davis, how one citizen scientist cannot stand alone.
Yes, I'm KK Davis. I'm a longtime Fairbanks resident and want to thank the organizers for creating this opportunity to encourage discussion around community citizen science. I'm going to share a lightning version of a complex phenomenon that I will refer to as Arctic aerosol clouds, presenting their effects as layered pollution. The cloud cover is a result of mid-latitude long-range transport of various pollutants, as well as natural chemicals and their uptake with moisture. PFAS, that you may be familiar with, is only one of the possible chemicals that make their way in the jet stream to the Arctic. Here in Alaska, the jet stream moves directly from Eastern China and Russia, heavily laden with particulate matter and emissions from the many forms of production and combustible power generation. I noticed considerable changes in the cloud cover beginning in 2017. By 2018, I had confirmed for myself that the aerosol cloud cover was not a product of the Fairbanks pollution problem that maybe some of you are aware of. This was a much larger problem presenting itself across the state and the circumpolar north. I will qualify myself as an observer with a snapshot of my background. I'm first and foremost an observer, and nothing gets by me. I'm a hunter and a fisher, a gatherer, and a master gardener in this far north. I've been a part of a long-standing family business in providing the public with access to the interior's rivers by way of Canoe, Alaska. I also hold a BA in Arctic Environmental Policy with a Master's Diploma in Polar Law. I will clarify, I do not study citizen science as a discipline within academia, and I am not provided with any guidance or support network in trying to raise awareness to the identified environmental problem. My observations, coupled with my study of long-range transport of pollutants, reveals the complexities and painstakingly slow process for action. This looming cloud got my attention when I realized that far less light was reaching us in our already dark months. And I was personally affected by a family member's suicide in 2018, who had made clear mention of the lack of light the week before leaving us. The density, color, and residual effect from these clouds raises questions about how much and what kind of pollutants are dropping into the hydrological system and the air that we breathe. What is the uptake for wildlife? And what are the toxicological effects on the peoples harvesting these resources? I have triumphed in sharing my observations and have been included in several events, and my voice has contributed to the need for citizen science in the Arctic. However, the environmental problem at hand is not yet met with a citizen science platform in the Arctic. Citizen science is a growing field of study, which is a triumph and in and of itself, but in delivering actual citizen science concerns to policy in the form of citizen science is insofar a fragmented process that has been taken up more heavily by academia. So the grand challenges that I see here are disconnect between the sea of information being generated and bridging the gap between real world and policy, platforms promoting the dialogue for the concept of citizen science, but not enough progress in validating the actual environmental problem at hand. Is citizen science only effective under the umbrella of academia? I propose my ideas encompass maybe taking an environmental problem and approaching it from the point of view of a task force, encouraging timely action and response. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. That was really interesting.
You can find me here, by the way, any way, shape, or form you can you'll find my contacts in this website. Thank you.
Okay, and because these are lightning talks, we'll just hold questions until the end. We'll have a chunk of time at the end after this next presentation. So thank you, and we'll just move on, but circle back around. Okay, so our next lightning talk is Connor Rettinger. I apologize if I said that wrong, from the University of Ottawa, a comprehensive content analysis examining Arctic maritime shipping risks in the Northwest Passage.
So just want to note that I will be looking this way, and if don't get distracted just because my screen's over this way. So let me just share my screen for you guys and begin the presentation. So just want to let you guys know that this is a part of one out of 2-part series of my master's thesis. And so basically what the whole concept and the premise of this study was to basically look at the Arctic as a whole and really create an inventory. So one thing that we've noticed in the Arctic oh, wait, let me just begin by introducing myself. Sorry about that, everybody. My name is Connor Rettinger. I'm from the University of Ottawa. So this is my master's research. I'm now a PhD student at the University of Ottawa. Time crunch kind of got to me. But anyway, so what we're doing is we're really trying to examine this hot topic in a cold environment. So the Northwest Passage has been contested for quite a few years, looking at a variety of different factors. And as sea ice has been diminishing significantly, this has opened up new economic passageways, whether that be for tourism and other economic reasons with trade and all different other aspects of travel. And so this creates a wide range of issues. And so after doing a couple of analysis, we were looking at different types of areas where potentially this could happen, whether that be Arctic shipping, and two main routes, the north route, which is highlighted in light blue, and then the bottom route, which is highlighted in darker blue. And typically right now, 90% of all travel goes and uses the darker route. So basically the whole entire premise of this study was really to identify and create an inventory of both hazards and risks relating to all different types of operations, whether that be looking at political risks, whether that be looking at social risks, community-centered risks, environmental risks, pollutant risks. So all the presentations kind of predecessing mine really have encapsulated both the human and the natural different types of hazards and risks that are available to Arctic and northern communities. So this research is kind of the first kick of the can to really bring every research, all human, natural research or science research together and try to create some form of comprehensive framework to assess this. And while we're doing that, we're also trying to create some form of data quality standard as well. So what this is hoping to do is really create a thorough assessment for the future. So those are kind of three research objectives for this study. So when we're looking at the methodology for creating this comprehensive risk assessment, what we're looking at is a failure mode's effectiveness and criticality analysis, the risk rating and data quality. And what we looked at was we looked at some peer-reviewed sources, 94 to be exact, and identified the consequence, probability, present-day causes. And so what we did was we used this risk rating chart to look at probability versus consequence, rating them from indetectable to very high. And then as we progressed, we also looked at data quality indicators using evidence score as well as the level of agreement to really kind of create a comprehensive outlook as to what these hazards and these risks are. All this was adopted by the IPCC. And just to kind of identify the definition of hazards and risks is a hazard's more of a natural occurrence, whereas a risk is more of a human-centered. So when we're looking at these risk rating scores, some of the results that we were really looking at is a lot of the risks for this analysis were really human-centered. There was a lot of linkages to humans. So operational discharges, lack of Inuit agencies, degradation of indigenous cultural and natural resources. Those were the most highest risks. Whereas when we look at the hazards, transportation of dangerous goods, multi-year sea ice presence, and air emissions were more natural occurrences were summed up the hazards. And as you can see in some of the hazards, they were actually very high. So that they were showing very high and also had a very high data quality rating. And so once we gathered those hazards and risks, we looked at the themes, and through those themes, we kind of pieced together different theme groups where we were able to find 5 recommended for further examination. And then when we're looking at hazards and risks, 24 hazards and 47 risks were identified for further examination. And I think the timer went off. I'm not 100% sure, but just as a quick scope is basically just to create a comprehensive risk assessment. And just want to say thanks, everybody.
Great job. Thank you so much, Connor. And actually the timer had not quite gone off, so you're very timely. If you have anything else you want to throw in there, feel free.
Yeah, thank you so much. Perfect. And as everybody can see it with the QR code at the top of the presentation, that's actually my QR code to contact info. So if you have any suggestions along this process, any questions, comments, anything that would really help further improve this project, it would be greatly appreciated. So if you want to scan that, that'd be great. And so as you can see, we've completed the risk analysis. All we have left is the risk evaluation and assessment, and then obviously reporting and the treatment of those risks. So what we're really trying to look at is a completion of a spatial analysis to identify these important nodes, so then we can link the hazards and risks identified to spatial correlations to really identify and hopefully create like some form of app or tool for anybody to use to really identify where these risks are located. And then also the facilitation of a comprehensive risk assessment. And like I said before, my name's Connor, but if you have any questions about this research, please either scan the QR code or my email is up on the slide there. So thanks everybody for listening.
Great, thank you, Connor. That was really fascinating. And there is one question in the chat. Oh, well, it was from Stanette, and they asked, how are you expanding on this work for your PhD? I think looks like you already answered a little bit of that, but did you have anything further to expand on that question?
Kind of a little bit. So yeah, thanks for the question, Stinnett. So basically what I'm really hoping to do is really create that comprehensive risk assessment framework. But I also want to not leave everybody and leave the academic community being like, well, so what about this? Identifying all those hazards and risks are great, but I really want to also try to dive into the climate adaptation piece and also risk mitigation piece, and hopefully propose some form of adaptation strategies are the most effective to mitigate the top risks. And then I think I also see someone in the audience that has their hand up as well.
Yes, I think you're right. So please go ahead. If you want to maybe say your name first.
The folks at the OHTC, there's several people, to just introduce yourselves. Since there's multiple people, we can't see your names in the Zoom.
That's what I was going to say too.
Hello, hi. This is I'm Tony Allen from Wilkapto Amo Group, and to talk about the shipping or the ice breaking to anywhere in the north should be dismissed, because due to the ice breakers, they break the ice, right? And there's current under the ice, and the current pushes the ice away and the wind plays a factor in breaking the ice, and it pushes the ice together, creating more open water, and it creates more humidity into the air, and it affects the whole north. Everywhere it's cold, it affects. Humidity affects the cold, and the world needs to stop ice breaking so our climate can slowly maybe go back to what it used to be. And if the world stops ice breaking, our ice can come back. Maybe can go back to closer to how it was in the past. That's my piece to say. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Adam Cook Canada, OHTC second resource person. I have here with me the Ulu Amo group.
Patrick, the leader of our group, he's out on a polar bear hunt at the moment, so he's probably not going to be with us today and tomorrow. Yep.
Perfect.
Well, it's awesome, nice information you guys are presenting. It's interesting to listen to all the differences between what's going on in the world, not only up here in the Arctic. It's nice to know what's going on other parts of the world, other parts of the globe. Keep up you guys' work and keep it up. That's all I'd like to say. Good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. That was interesting information. There's some chatter in the chat on different aspects of what you've just been mentioning, and also a couple of other questions for KK. Let's see. So Jose, I think it's hard to tell from people's short names, but I am an atmospheric science grad student at the University of Washington. I am curious as to if you have looked into satellite observations for the clouds that you were describing in your presentation, KK, and if they are present in the summer or just winter months.
Thank you, Joseph. This is present during our winter months, but beginning to bear its teeth across the whole year. Originally, winter months and increasing now. And yeah, it's apparent during the summer as well, but more so in the winter. I hope that's clear enough.
Excellent. And then there's another chat from Rami Wood, also to you, KK. What you shared has been a topic and experience, a blind spot for maybe too many, has posed some challenges for Fairbanks itself specifically for some time. I respect and appreciate your presentation, and with respect to decades and generations of work, consideration, story, with care and compassion to lots which has been lived. I think you share a very important and not untimely point. Thank you. I just wanted to put that out there. So excellent. Anyone else have questions for either Connor or KK?
Hi, Audrey.
Yes.
This is Anne. Does KK, are you familiar with PACE? I can't remember what it stands for. Janet, somebody help me. PACE. It's they do studies on air pollution in Anchorage. Are you connected with any of the research groups?
I am not connected with research groups, although I'm quite familiar with PACE and its work.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure you knew about their efforts. I don't know what they're doing right now, but in Anchorage, but
yeah, I didn't realize that they have a research network in Anchorage. So I will certainly look into that. Thank you, Anne.
yeah, I think they do. And some of them do anyway.
Thanks very much.
Well, let's move on then, because we've got quite a bit more to cover today. And we'll go into our next plenary session with, if anybody's following specifically on the agenda, we're at talk P7. And Sarah Clement from the University of Alaska Fairbanks will be talking about scientists' perspectives on doing community and citizen science research in the North.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Clement, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. My dissertation is looking at how different groups of people engage with and learn through community and citizen science. So I work primarily on the Fresh Eyes on Ice project, which is a community and citizen science program trying to understand how freshwater ice conditions are changing across Alaska. And other parts of my dissertation have looked at how K through 12 students are learning through participating in this project, how K through 12 teachers engage with community and citizen science through Fresh Eyes on Ice. And today, the group of people that I'm going to focus on are the scientists, many of us in this Zoom room, who do this type of research in the Arctic and subarctic. Okay. So for today, I'm going to differentiate the people who participate in community and citizen science research as the scientists and then everyone else, since there are such a wide variety of names and roles for people who do this kind of work: volunteers, partners, collaborators, observers, etc. And the scientists in this study are professionally trained researchers who engage in community and citizen science work in the Arctic or subarctic. So substantial effort has been devoted to studying the everyone else, the participants in community and citizen science research. And these studies aren't specific to the North, but they do provide a helpful kind of 30,000-foot view of this group. So we know that citizen science participants in the United States tend to be white, highly educated, and middle-aged or retired, though the demographics of participants are becoming more diverse as time goes on. There have been myriad studies that focus on the motivations of participants, which are often related to personal interests and values, such as the desire to learn more about a scientific topic or feelings of social responsibility. And we're also learning more about what participants gain from doing this type of research, including science practice skills, content knowledge, and greater agency to implement pro-environmental action. And on the other hand, relatively little research has focused on scientists' attitudes and perceptions towards community and citizen science research. There are only a few studies to date which have focused on the scientists in citizen science, and the focus has primarily been on scientists leading or working on contributory projects in which participants help collect data based on what the scientists' research questions are and the data collection protocols that they provide. In general, scientists in these studies have had mixed feelings about the benefits of doing community and citizen science research, particularly if they weren't already doing this kind of research. And those scientists who were already engaged in this type of research listed benefits such as access to more data and increased opportunities to interact with the public. But they also described worries about managing data quality, worries about taking advantage of volunteers' time and labor, and describing a lack of institutional support to start and maintain community and citizen science projects. And so there's still a lot we don't know. I mean, we know some about what we all think are the benefits and challenges of this type of research, but not a lot about why scientists decide to do community and citizen science research. So that's what this part of my dissertation is looking at. We spend a lot of time, based on the literature, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out the participants and relatively little effort reflecting on what role we as scientists play in the community and citizen science process. Scientists have a lot of power across all types of community and citizen science projects, even in collaborative or co-created projects in which power sharing is a central aspect of project design. Here in the North, where we're contending with disastrous legacies of colonialism and harm perpetrated by outsider researchers in many communities, I think it's very important for us, for the scientific community, to engage in self-reflection around why we want to do this kind of research and how we can do it well for our own benefit and the benefit of the people and places we work with. So we had 3 research questions to explore for this study. 1, what do scientists perceive to be the benefits and challenges of community and citizen science research in the North? 2, what motivates scientists to use community and citizen science research methods? And 3, what outcomes do scientists experience when engaging in this type of research? So to answer these questions, we developed and sent out a survey to community and citizen science practitioners in the Arctic and subarctic. We sent the survey announcement through several email listservs, including Arcus, and also distributed the link to the survey at conferences and through word of mouth. And in total, we received 43 completed surveys, and survey respondents could opt in for a follow-up interview at the end of the survey. Eventually, we'll include 22 interviews in the final write-up, but only 18 interviews are included in the initial analysis presented here. I've got a few pie charts on the screen which describe the population of the 18 interviewees. 72% were women, half were between the ages of 35 and 44, and half have been doing this type of research for between 1 and 5 years. And then I don't have a graphic up on the screen to show this, but of these 18, 72 of the interviewees had projects located, 72%, excuse me, had projects located in Alaska, 22% had projects located in Canada, and 6% were located in Finland. So to analyze the interview data, we first read through a subset of the interviews to draw out emergent themes and to help us form our final codebook. And we then divided the remaining interviews between us to code. And I'll share some of the initial findings on the next few slides. So we first looked at the general benefits and challenges to doing community and citizen science research in the North that the scientists identified. The top 4 benefits scientists spoke about were 1, that different perspectives contribute positively to research. 2, community and citizen science research provides education and outreach opportunities for participants. 3, scientists can gain access to more data. And 4, participants and scientists have opportunities to engage with each other. And I've got a few example excerpts for each of these slides. One scientist said, you can only give so many PowerPoints, you can only give so many talks in community centers. It isn't until you bust out the microscope and you go down to the dock and you take a sample and you look at it, that is just so much more important, doing the physical work and getting people excited about what they can see. Some of the other benefits that scientists mentioned less often included using community and citizen science as a way to funnel resources, such as money and equipment, to communities, and being able to use community and citizen science data to directly impact policies and decision-making processes. Regarding challenges, scientists identified aligning scientist and participant priorities as the top difficulty, followed by avoiding colonial behavior, working in teams, starting and sustaining relationships with participants, and trade-offs in program design. And so one quote on aligning priorities, one scientist said, "The most challenging thing is I have an agenda with this project and it's arguably pretty focused. And whether it's other scientists on the team or teachers in a classroom or people in a community, they're interested in my agenda, but they got a lot of other things going on." A few other challenges scientists mentioned included experiencing challenging traveling conditions to get to communities, difficulty engaging participants over Zoom, and ultimately generating science publications from community and citizen science data that aren't written for the general public and therefore aren't very accessible. So we then looked at scientists' personal motivations and outcomes from doing this type of research, and scientists described many reasons why they felt personally motivated to engage in community and citizen science research. And the top ones were because they wanted to make a difference for the people and communities they worked with, for science, etc. They wanted to learn about other cultures. They wanted to use interdisciplinary research methods, and they had a passion for the research topic at hand. So I'll share two quotes here. On learning about other cultures, one scientist said, "I love learning what it's like to live a life that I'm never going to live. And just understanding how people's worldviews are different from mine is also changing my own." And another said, "I haven't had many experiences of walking people through the research that excites me and seeing their excitement too, but it did happen once, and seeing how well that was received among the participants made me feel so good, because that's the kind of thing that I love doing." And something that I found interesting was that more data is, like, it seems to be one of the universally cited benefits for scientists doing this type of research. And not one of the 18 interviewees in this initial analysis mentioned more data as a motivation for doing this type of research. Okay, finally, we asked scientists about what they've gained from doing this type of research, and the top three things that they mentioned were that they gained new research perspectives on their research topic, they improved their science communication skills, and they developed or grew relationships with participants. And so one scientist said, "It's totally changed my perspective on how to do ecological research, especially in coastal environments in the Arctic, because it's opened up a whole new door to collecting observations on a year-round basis and not over-relying on technology to get information." And one of the most common science communication skills that came up was summed up pretty well by this scientist, who said, "Over time, it comes naturally that you just slay the jargon." So this was just a snapshot of our initial findings. We plan to include the other 4 interviews and data from the survey in the final analysis and write-up as well. And so just in closing, I think as community and citizen science research continues to expand across the globe, it's a really exciting time to be in this field here in the Arctic and have the opportunity to define what community and citizen science research looks like here. And one of the things that I was kind of worried about in presenting this work is that it would come off as really self-congratulatory. You know, scientists just want to make a difference, and aren't we so great, and all of that. But I think what we see in this data is that scientists are coming into this work with good intentions, things like wanting to make a difference, wanting to avoid replicating damage done to communities by previous researchers. And our next step is to make sure that we actually follow through on those intentions. And I think we can do that by continuing to hold spaces like this one to talk about current events and issues in community and citizen science research. We can do that by continuing to provide training and resources for scientists who are new to the Arctic and new to this field. We can do that by continuing to talk about how to share and yield power to the people and places that we work with. And I think it's just really neat and so important to see that what we're gaining from this work is more than just publications and resume boosters. There are other real benefits that aren't just about our careers. And so anyway, I just wanted to end with a quote from one of the scientists that I spoke with who said, science is fun just for answering questions and understanding how things work, but it's much more meaningful when you can do science that is actually helpful and needed by people. And I've got a couple of references, and that's it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was fascinating, especially the direct quotes. They speak to, the part, I think, in all of us that are doing this work, that it's an effort that's greater than just data collection. And that's so heartwarming to see. So thank you. Does anyone have a question for Sarah? We've got a couple minutes. Looks like Brandy wanted to know how to cite your work. I remember seeing that question. If you have something you can stick into the chat.
Sure,
that would be fabulous.
Can I ask a question real quick? Sorry, I'm having trouble finding the raise the hand thingy. Sorry.
Go ahead, Anne.
This is Anne. So I didn't hear it. Maybe I missed it. Did anybody talk about, because this is why I started it and why my community monitors were volunteer for so long before we could get funded? Community service learning. Have you ever heard that term?
I have. I can't say it came up in the context of the conversations I had with these scientists, but yeah.
Yeah, so just to add to the, the list of why I do this and why they like to help me. So that they definitely are doing it for that reason, because they feel like they're helping their community.
Yeah,
Do
absolutely.
you mind if I ask a quick question?
Sure. It looks like Rosalie had her hand up, and then
Yeah,
maybe go to
I
the
do.
next.
Thanks. Thanks, Sarah. That was a really wonderful presentation, and I think really timely. And I think it's so good that you have this baseline data of why scientists are doing this type of work now, and also really interesting that it was like 75% women researchers doing this. But I'm curious to see how maybe this changes. Now we start to see projects like Sanook that are actually giving money to people by involving the community. So I think it's a really important time for us to hold our colleagues to the reasons why they're doing this type of research and not just chasing money. So do you have like long-term goals to kind of track this, or do you see problems with where the money is going in the future for why people are doing this type of work?
I'm interested in continuing to like do this kind of self-reflection work as a community. I don't really know what that'll look like right now. My focus is kind of on the PhD finish line. But
fair. That's fair.
Yeah, eventually I would like to get there. And I hadn't considered your question about like following the money before, but I think it's a really good one to reflect on. So thank you.
Great. And then somebody else had a question, but I didn't catch who that was before Rosalie asked her question.
And we can get to those too at the end, Audrey, just so we can get to the presenter, the upcoming. But yeah, we have a few minutes here. We got ahead of ourselves.
Which is always a good problem to have in a conference. Usually it's going the other direction. So applause to everyone for keeping us on target. Okay, so does anyone else have a question for Sarah before we move on?
This is Rami, and more than a question, just an invitation that this is a very deep and robust area, and I'm so encouraged and thankful. And yeah, I look forward to following up with everyone and anyone further with all of this. Sarah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rami.
I had a quick question if there is still time.
We do have about a minute or so left. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'll ask quickly. Hi, my name's Tosh. I work for ALOCA, which stands for the Exchange for Local Observations and Knowledge of the Arctic. Thank you for your presentation. That was super interesting. I was just wondering if you made a distinction between researchers working in communities on community-led research and community-based research versus citizen science, because I typically make a distinction between the two. So I was curious if you could comment on that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So the survey invitation was for anyone who does community and citizen science research in the Arctic and subarctic. So I left it up to people to decide whether that fit their description. And in the interviews, I asked everyone, what is community and citizen science research? What does that phrase mean to you? And a very large number, I don't have the information right in front of me, but a very large number of those folks said, well, those are two different things. Let's talk about the difference. So yeah, that did come up quite a bit. Yeah, thanks for that question.
All right, thank you again, Sarah, and for everyone participating in this chat. It looks like maybe, Sarah, there's one more question. I think we'll move on, but there's one more question in the chat if you want to step over there and answer that. And I'll introduce our next plenary speaker. We're moving on to P8. Shayna Wisdom from the Alaska Ocean Observing System is going to be talking about backyard buoys, equipping Indigenous communities with ocean intelligence platforms.
All right. Well, thank you all for having me. I'm Shayna Wisdom with the Alaska Ocean Observing System, or AOOS. And I was hoping Martin Edwardson from UIC Science would be able to join me, but he has to take his fiance to a doctor's appointment. So he sends his regards. I'm presenting on the Backyard Buoy program on behalf of my team here with Martin Edwardson from UIC Science, Jenny Evans, Michael Kunuk Donovan, and John Hobson Jr. from the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission, and then Duncan McTavish from SOFAR Ocean. So thank you for having me. I'll just gonna give a quick background. I grew up in a small town in New Mexico and played basketball there in college to stay to get a degree, and kind of meandered and ended up here 18 years ago in Alaska, and have had the great opportunity to work in a lot of communities as a private industry, working a lot with oil and gas for many years. And then came here to Alaska Ocean Observing System 3 years ago as the new director. So since coming here, we've been really working on trying to continue to build out co-production projects, community sampling, et cetera. So if you have any questions about AOOS, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you on ways that we can help. But to jump into our Backyard Buoy program, this is a National Science Foundation Convergence Accelerator program. The Convergence Accelerator grant is exciting. It's a lot of money thrown at you for a short period of time, and it means you have a lot to do. We've been able to work with other regions on this one. This was a teamed project with Alaska, Pacific Northwest, and Pacific Islands. And our goal is empowering Indigenous and other coastal communities to collect, steward, and use these wave data that complements their blue economy, their existing knowledge to support their safety at sea. So it's a big project with a lot of partners. Here's our big team here. Each one of the regions has an Indigenous partner. So for Alaska, we have UIC Science and the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission. And part of why we worked with them is I've worked with the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission for 15 years. And so I have a lot of great relationships. And when we needed a quick response to a proposal, you go with who you know. So because we've worked together and trust each other, we've worked together. We were able to put this proposal together. We also have educational and technical partners across those 3 regions. For Alaska, we're working with the Alaska Native Science and Engineering Programmer, ANSEP. We also have worked with University of Alaska Fairbanks. And then the keystone for this is our regional associations. As you can see from the map, the entire coastline of the US, including Great Lakes, Alaska, Pacific Islands, and Caribbean, are covered by a regional association that is part of the Integrated Ocean Observing System. So I'm throwing a lot of acronyms out here. I apologize for the alphabet soup. That's part of working with federal grants. So all 3 groups are working really closely together with all of our Indigenous partners to get these wave buoys in the water. And that leads into this slide on why this technology. Wave information is huge for maritime safety, but the wave buoys historically and kind of traditionally have been these big wave buoys that are hundreds of thousands of dollars that require really big boats. And it's tough to have those in small communities. And so as the technology has improved to the point of these SOFAR buoys, it's been really helpful to have this smaller technology. They're about basketball sized. Everything for me is about basketball. So they're about basketball sized. They're able to be deployed by individuals in the water. They're made to be really easy to use. They're a GPS-based movement platform for providing wave information. So this technology provider, SOFAR Ocean, has done a really amazing job of building this technology that works for individuals rather than big science, big industry partners. And they're about $5,000 to $6,000, so much more affordable. I'm very careful to not say cheap because $5,000 is not cheap, but it's definitely better than $150,000 or $200,000. But what's really most important and exciting about this project for me is that it's been co-designed with inclusivity at every single step. So the proposal development, the buoy placement, the actual deployments, the data tools, the data sharing and knowledge sharing. And so I'll go into more of this for each one of these slides. But when we say development, it's really that it's been funding. It's not just that we're involving and going to meetings, it's funding included in this NSF proposal. They helped us write the NSF proposal. They all received funding once we got it. And how we looked at the funding for this phase 1 of the project was each one of the Whaling Captains Association for each of the 11 whaling villages received a donation just to help with their time in giving us feedback on the design of the program, of even if they were even interested. We also provided support for AEWC staff. It's a small staff, they're busy. There's a lot of travel associated with working with all of the captains. And so we helped provide labor and travel for them and whaling captains. So this was part of just the proposal development. And in my experience in working with AWC and villages prior to this was there's a lot of interest by scientists to go to communities and involve them, but a lot of times it's already, the proposal is already funded. And so by then the input is kind of minimum. So this was very much at the very beginning. The second step was once we had the funding, we spent a lot of time going to all of the different AWC meetings and holding workshops with large printed out maps, getting from each of the captains which villages was interested, where they would want the buoys, why they would want the buoys. And the key with this was 2 years worth of interacting with all of the different whaling captains. You can see some meetings here that I was up in Utqiagvik, down here in Anchorage, in Fairbanks. So at each one of the AWC meetings to get information from the captains. And based on that, in 2023, we were excited to deploy quite a few buoys. We had permitted, which permits are always an issue, but we were able to work through this. We permitted polygons of where buoys might go. And I mentioned the polygons because that's important, because the captains have now the ability to move the buoys based on the permits instead of having to wait for permits to be updated. We have a 4-month season, and if it takes 2 months to get a permit, kind of messes us up if we're not able to be able to move the buoys. So this is what we permitted in 2023. We had Diomede, Point Hope, Wainwright, Utqiagvik, and Koktovik. What we ended up getting out there was the Koktovik buoy facilitator wasn't able to get them out, and the same thing with the Diomede. So we ended up with buoys at Point Hope, Wainwright, and Utqiagvik. The co-design was also part of the buoy deployment. After a few months of kind of trying to figure it out, AEWC staff realized they were way too busy to do this. And we had posted a job for a buoy program manager across the slope. We had it in the Sounder. We had it out in newspapers, radios. We had posted it on Facebook. There wasn't really there wasn't people that were able to do that on a big scale. And so we hired UIC Science, and Martin Edwardson was the lead for that. AEWC also hired the village facilitators in each of those communities that actually went out and deployed those. And there's a per buoy stipend plus fuel reimbursement plus travel support. So it is very much a supported program all the way through. And Martin got training by SOFAR Ocean in April, and then he led all of the in-person and virtual training for the facilitators, and they dealt with all of the supplies. So the moorings, all of it was designed by the community members that are experts out there. Like I said, we had this was our 2023 season. And so we had these buoys in the water, and they were deployed by community members in the villages. We had we were able to get all those out, the 13 out. One buoy off of Point Hope went on walkabout, separated from the mooring. We still were able to get the wave data from it, but it definitely kind of circled between Cape Lisburn, went towards Point Lay, and then did some circling out towards Russia. That was the last we saw of it when the light went out. So, fortunately, we didn't cause an incident. We were a little worried that Spy Buoy Gate might have come back to haunt us, but it didn't. And then 2 of the buoys off of Utqiagvik, we deployed them right off of Point Barrow, or we connected from Barrow, deployed them right off of Point Barrow. And that's where the converging oceans are right there, and it pulled them under. So we want to deploy those in the same locations because that's where several whaling captains capsized several years ago and died. And so we want to make sure we have information for that area, but we need to adjust the mooring design to be able to deal with the currents. Part of this author was how do you look at the data? And so we worked with the University of Washington through that Pacific Northwest group. They designed this app. This app it's a prototype. It should be out on Apple pretty soon, as well as Android. This was designed by software engineers, but they came to each one of the community members and asked, how do you like this shown? And so this was very much an app designed within. There's a QR code on the site. This prototype app still works. You can just click on that there, and it's a prototype right now, but you can see real-time information. Right now, there's only 1 buoy in the water in the Marshall Islands, but as soon as we get these buoys in the water here in June, once open water season is really here, then you'll be able to see buoys in Alaska. And this was used across the slope by boat users in 2023. So it seemed to work really well for community members to use the information to make safe decisions of going out on the water. The other issue when you're working with the communities and this is the data sharing, the data sovereignty. These are buoys deployed by community members, and the data are owned by them. And so over the course of a few years through all those workshops, we kept asking, do you want to share this information with others on our website? Hopefully the Weather Service, but it was up to them. And it took 2 years of talking to the communities, talking to the whaling captains, for the whaling captains to go back and talk to their people. And after those few years, we did get approval. And so these data are now available on our AUS website. And one of the goals, particularly for the Whaling Commission, was they would really want the National Weather Service to include this information to better the marine weather forecasts. So, but again, that was very much working with them to decide that the data they owned would be shared. That wasn't our call, that was their call. And then knowledge sharing. The beauty of this project has been working with all of the other partners. And we've done that through monthly working groups. So just having a standing meeting on Zoom where members of, like we have them set into buoy working groups, data tools, co-design, and education. And what that does is provide a forum for everyone working in that particular space to come together, share information, learn each other, lessons learned. And then we've had workshops in Utqiagvik and then in Honolulu. And our favorite parts about those meetings has been watching, like, for example, one of the chiefs from American Samoa and John Hobson Jr. from Wainwright talking about how they're working with their community members to trust the information, that the wave data was just something that supplemented their traditional knowledge. And our next steps are we're deploying buoys 2024. This is what we're looking to permit right now. And we were able to get some, AUS was getting some additional NOAA funding through the Inflation Reduction Act. And so we're going to continue this project because community members have told us that they really love it. And then we're hoping to also deploy some buoys near Quinnahock on Western Alaska. Here's our contact information. We have a Facebook page, a website, and if you have any questions, please contact me. There you go.
Thank you so much, Shana. That was fascinating. And it looks like Janet put both the AU's website and the Backyard Buoys website in the chat if anybody is interested in reading more about the project and the efforts. And does anyone have a question?
Looks like there's a question of a GPS tracker. Yeah, so it is, it's GPS based, like it's the movement of the wave up and down GPS, but it means it's a GPS tracker as well. These buoys can be used as drifters, and if you go to the SOFAR Ocean website, there's actually hundreds and thousands of these deployed across the world right now. We chose for those not to be drifters so that community members can use them over and over.
I actually had a question about that too, Shana. Do the communities own the buoys that they have in their?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
So
Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission does. AWC is who's managing all of this. But so yeah, they bought the buoys, they own the buoys. What we're trying to do is just help with like data transmission fees. These do have modems, cell modems in here, but which works on the 2 mile off of Wainwright, but that's not the one that's going to work at the 10 mile. So that sends information via Iridium.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. It looks like there's a couple questions more in the chat, so we'll move to the next presentation just to keep up with our timeline. But Shana, if you don't mind just stepping over to the chat when you get a chance, there's a couple more
No
in
problem.
there.
Thank you
again.
Please reach out if you have any questions. I'd love to share more on the project.
We'll have a little bit of time after this next presentation too, if folks have additional questions for any of the speakers, and so you can jump back on then. Okay, so our last talk for today, Plenary 9, is by Nathaniel Holloway, the University of Ottawa, and he'll be talking about understanding changing population trends of the Arlequh, Oceanus orca, which is otherwise known as killer whales or orcas, and implications of changes in the Eastern Canadian Arctic.
Hi, so thanks so much for the introduction there. Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Nathaniel Holloway. I'm a master's student working at the University of Ottawa with Jackie Dawson at the Department of Geography. So like our host said, today I'll be giving you a brief overview of my thesis research to date, including a literature review, research questions, and proposed methods for the investigation of the presence of Arlequh, also known as killer whales, in the Canadian Arctic based on different climate scenarios, as well as the social and ecological implications of these changes. So I will note before going further, this is all very preliminary. I'm in my first year of my master's, so very much open to any suggestions. If those come up, just please put them in the chat because very much appreciated. So, as I'm sure you all know, the Canadian Arctic is experiencing rapid climate and environmental changes due to global warming. Mean temperatures in the region have increased by 2.3 degrees Celsius from 1948 to 2016, with changes during the winter season being most pronounced, increasing by as much as 4.3 degrees Celsius during the same time frame. This has a direct effect on the thickness and extent of sea ice, with many regions seeing decreases in total summer sea ice from -5% to -20% per decade and a lengthened open water season. The sea ice presents a barrier for many animals to access and remain within the Canadian Arctic. With its decreased presence, species which tend to avoid the area are becoming more prominent in the region. The Arlequh is one such species, with the number of reported sightings in the Hudson Bay region rising exponentially from 1900 to 2004, from sporadic sightings to multiple yearly sightings. Inuit knowledge surveys from 2008 to 2010 in 11 Nunavut communities also corroborate with these findings, with 70% of 75 interviewees noting the population is increasing and/or that the number of sightings is increasing. So Arlequh are a higher trophic level predator, which can impact the functioning of local ecosystems simply due to their presence. This can include influences via consumptive effects, i.e. direct predation, and non-consumptive effects, i.e. behavioral changes on their prey species. Both can impact the health and fitness of local populations and ecosystems. The graphic to the right demonstrates an example of a trophic cascade recorded in the Aleutian Archipelago from 1972 to 1997, believed to have been caused directly by the increased presence of Arleuk. Specific to the Canadian Arctic, a recent study finds that the estimated seasonal population of 163 Arleuk occupying the northern Baffin Island region could conservatively consume upwards of 1,200 narwhal in a 3-month period, a significant number. The behavior of prey species can also become more erratic and/or unpredictable in their presence, with narwhal, beluga, and bowhead whales frequenting shallower water and ceasing communications when Arleuk are present. This can influence whether prey have access to productive feeding grounds, how much energy the animals expel avoiding the Arleuk, whether prey are vocalizing and mating, and other essential behaviors for the long-term health of these populations. So Inuit hunters in the Canadian Arctic rarely hunt the species in open water conditions. There are 3 dominant reasons outlined in the literature. The first is that there's a common cultural belief associated with the Arleuk, including that Arleuk hold grudges against Inuit hunters who have harvested their kin and will target them for boat flipping as retaliation. Though I should note that this has been changing in the, there's been notes of this changing as boats become larger and safer all around. The second is that Arleuk are all around dangerous and difficult to hunt, especially in open water conditions. So this leads many people to only hunt them when they're entrapped by sea ice, supposedly making them easier and safer to hunt. The third is that there is a preference for alternate foods in the area, with many Inuit knowledge surveys in Canada noting that the meat is tougher and/or that there's little use for the meat beyond dog food. Despite these common beliefs, the impacts Arleuk have on local species can influence Inuit subsistence hunting activities and, by extension, their perceptions of the species. The same Inuit knowledge survey from 2008 to 2010 noted that 52% of interviewees held negative perceptions of the species, while 20% held positive perceptions. Negative perceptions were mostly attributed to the species' impact on the abundance and movements of local wildlife, many noting that they are competitors for food. Another common negative perception was of the safety concerns from being near the species. Positive perceptions related primarily to the Arleuk's impact on the behavior of local animals, often causing them to cluster closer to the shoreline and making them easier prey for hunters. However, the 2022 harvest of an Arleuk in Pond Inlet during the open water season, which we can see pictured on screen, may suggest that these perceptions are changing, with many of the comments in the news article citing the increasing impact of Arleuk on local fauna and associated pressures on hunting for their actions. Despite its importance, there's persistent uncertainty about the Arleuk and about local perceptions of and interactions with the species. In 2017, the IUCN designated the Arleuk as data deficient, and COSEWIC recently reaffirmed the designation of the species as special concern, noting the overall lack of knowledge about the Northwest Atlantic Eastern Arctic Arleuk population as an important challenge to surmount. This presents challenges for well-informed conservation and for adequately predicting and mitigating the social and ecological implications of all these changes. Many experts and knowledge holders predict that the population will become more prominent in the region with climate change-induced reductions in sea ice. However, there are no studies dedicated to predicting the future of the population under different climate scenarios, and no recent social science studies dedicated to understanding how this may impact local Inuit subsistence hunting activities or their perceptions of the species. So, to address this uncertainty, 3 methods will be used to understand and forecast the socio-ecological implications of these changes. The first, scenario forecasting, will utilize a modified Delphi survey of experts of the Northwest Atlantic Eastern Arctic Arleuk population. This method will be used to generate forecasts of what will occur under 4 different climate scenarios in the medium and long term, respectively. A panel of experts will be identified according to the number of years spent working with and being around the species, and will include researchers from universities, governments, NGOs, and other sectors, as well as hunters and fishers in Arctic communities via local hunters and trappers organizations. The second method, Focus groups and interviews with hunters and fishers in the community of Pond Inlet will be utilized to understand how recent and forecasted demographic trends will impact subsistence hunting activities, what this could mean for the community, and for how they perceive of and interact with the species. The third method, community-based participatory mapping, will be used to map recent outlook sightings near the community of Pond Inlet to add to an existing sighting database. This will then be used to undertake exploratory spatial analyses to determine where outlook are most often sighted and how sightings are overlapping with ocean use and shipping patterns. So these will help address some of the ecological uncertainty related to the species, namely by producing forecasts under different climate scenarios about the number of days the population will remain in the Canadian Arctic, whether the population is increasing, decreasing, or stable, and the range of the population within the Canadian Arctic, an inventory of ecological implications from these changes, and maps of areas with relatively high density of outlook near the community of Pond Inlet. These maps would be corrected for observer effort using variables such as distance from the community, number of active hunters in Pond Inlet, and the expertise of different observer groups, among other variables. Other deliverables will also help address some of the social uncertainty related to the species' demographic trends in the region. An inventory of social implications from and adaptive behaviors related to recent and forecasted ecological changes associated with the outlook will be developed, and maps of recent outlook sightings overlain with ocean use patterns, including shipping routes and community hunting areas, will also be developed. Together, these resources will provide researchers, policymakers, conservationists, and ocean users with information to inform future work in and around the region. So in summary, this topic encapsulates the complexities of cascading impacts from climate and environmental change on northern subsistence activities and ecosystems. With climate change-induced range shifts in the Arctic, difficult questions may have to be asked and answered, such as perhaps having to reconsider which species are considered traditionally harvested and admissible for harvesting, how to balance Inuit subsistence hunting rights and ecological conservation projects, and about how the negative impacts of these decisions can be mitigated, among others. And of course, I would like to shout out Akarvik, my partner on this project, who's based out of Pond Inlet, and of course, my other partner, Stephen Ferguson from Fisheries and Oceans Canada. Like I said, open to suggestions, so here's my email. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, Nathaniel. That was really interesting and very timely also. So we do have some time for questions if anybody's got one specifically about this project. It looks like Stinette in the chat says this is a super interesting project. I am interested to know how you are approaching community consultations and whether this work has been co-created with community members at Garvik.
Yeah, it has. So first was a meeting with Jamal Shirley, excuse me, from the NRI, and where he actually brought the he brought up this the whole thing about killer whales outlook moving further into the Arctic. That was the first step. The second was discussing with community members in Pond Inlet, namely Michael Milton, who's with Akarvik, and getting his thoughts on what would like whether this is relevant for the community, whether it's important work that should be pursued, and also, of course, how to pursue it. So, yeah.
Other questions? Okay, excellent. Well, that was really interesting. Oh, what?
Just a quick one. Oh, and Judy asked one too. Nathan, did how many years? I know you just said you just started, but I forgot to see how many years you were going on this work.
Oh, it's a master's, so it's 2 years. Depending on the results, you know, if it's possible that I get there and that they're just like, oh, you know, we got other stuff to worry about, so you know, and in that case, then it'll just be dropped but no, yeah. So 2 years is I suppose the minimum, yeah.
And then it looks like Judy had a question. Do you know whether there are other communities that specifically hunt orcas for subsistence?
Yeah, I know that in Greenland it's quite common. Less so in the Canadian Arctic, like I said. except for when entrapped by sea ice, but no, definitely in Greenland. It brings along other considerations such as like if the orca population is marine mammal eating, then there's questions about like bioaccumulation of different diseases and contaminants. So yeah, even among communities where orcas are being hunted and we know they're being hunted, there are definitely considerations for the health of the population, like the community. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't even know that anybody ate or, hunted or ate orcas. So that's fascinating. I don't know if that's true in Alaska. If anybody hunts orcas in Alaska, I work with the state on a, it's like our state wildlife action plan, and they're one of our species of greatest conservation need, but it's always interesting when you have overlaps with harvested species. So that's really fascinating. I'm gonna have to look that up. Thank you. Okay, I think that wraps up our presentations for today. And I guess I'll just sort of summarize because we'll open it up again to questions for any of the presenters. We've heard about a lot of community-based monitoring programs over the last couple hours on HABs and contaminants, eDNA, wave data, cloud monitoring, and also on several talks on perceptions sort of within the overall community and citizen science community, perceptions of scientists doing the work, perceptions of the shipping industry on risks, and then of course the talk we just heard on perceptions of orcas moving into the Arctic. So I guess for me, it's a huge amount of information to consider and to think about all of the different ways that community and citizen science can be used to understand what's going on in the Arctic, and also to be more inclusive as far as people working in the environment and just being aware of what's going on, as well as aware of ways and methods for collecting data and sort of being in charge of their own data. That's a really great outcome. Does anyone have additional questions for any of the presenters, or any general kind of comments or questions to throw out to the group? It looks like we've got some hands up in the OHTC group.
Hi all, thank you again. It's been a really great meeting, brightening up my brain. And I've been thinking about phytoplankton research, and I think it should be worked on throughout the circumpolar world. And we can do research on phytoplankton, and we could find out contamination in this area compared to contamination halfway around the circumpolar world. And we could put that into writing or put it into data, and we could find out over the years how the phytoplankton is collecting what you call contaminants, and we could find out how we can how you say what's going into the phytoplankton, and it's being digested by what eats it, and we can find out what's going into our food and into our bellies. Also, the cloud pollutants, we could do that throughout the circumpolar Arctic also, and we can sort of know how our climate is changing throughout the circumpolar world. And that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And yes, I agree completely. I think that doing some large scale monitoring is definitely something we should be working towards. And this is reminding me, she's not a part of this conference, but I have a colleague who is doing a phytoplankton monitoring program from expedition cruise ships in the Antarctic, and they are collecting data on phytoplankton in different fjords in the Antarctic continent, and also doing some very basic research on some contaminants. And so it's interesting to think about how that might be applied in the Arctic. I don't know that it's been done from an expedition cruise ship platform yet. So something to think about. Other questions for any of the presenters or just the group in general? Lots of
Great
positive
first
feedback in the chat.
Good first day today. That was some good information to listen to for different workers around the world, different job, different jobs. It's cool. Nice to see work from all over the world. It's cool. Yep, different descriptions. Keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you for your support, and thank you for being with us today. It's great to have a group of folks and have your organization represented. So thank you for your participation and input, and hopefully you'll come back for more tomorrow.
Yes, we'll be
Yes,
back
for sure.
tomorrow.
We'll be back tomorrow morning.
Excellent.
Yes. Hey, before everybody leaves, though, I do want to share 2 door prize winners. So I know that we have lots of time left, but maybe we can end early with some door prizes before people bug off. We have, again, 2 doors prize winners were Nathan Holloway. You won something. So Judy will be in touch with you about that. And Deb Corso with UAF was the other door prize winner. So just want to get that out before people sign off for the day. And thank you, Audrey, for emceeing this afternoon. So yeah, it is hilarious, Nathan, but congratulations.
Well, thank you for keeping it light, Janet. The door prizes are always a fun way to end. And lots of positive feedback in the chat. I think my favorite comment so far is my mind and heart has grown today, and I would agree. So hopefully we will see everyone back tomorrow at 8 a.m. for the next and final day of the conference. It'll be a similar format as today was, and we look forward to seeing everyone there. Thank you all for attending today. It's been great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for joining. See you tomorrow morning or night, depending on where you are in the world.